Chapter 2058. Wreaking havoc in the Dark Mirage sect the moment the Thunderfire sword suppressed the white-haired old man, Yuan, and the black-clothed Zhuowen did not hold back at all. Zhuowen's glorious violet galaxy sword, combined with his powerful divine sense and the golden devil sword of no beginning, directly pierced through the crowd on the stairs. In just a single exchange, he killed 2 cultivators of the 3rd step of the void sky. Meanwhile, the black-clothed Zhuowen erupted with a terrifying power of lightning that protected Zhuowen. Die! As he passed through the crowd, 2 terrifying and vast forces suddenly attacked Zhuowen from behind. Without even thinking, the 64 golden devil swords of no beginning formed an enormous vortex of killing intent and met them head-on. Bang! To his astonishment, the vortex of killing intent was instantly destroyed, while he grunted and retreated repeatedly. 2 gray-robed middle-aged men blocked Zhuowen's path. Their auras were vast, and they were actually supreme experts of the 6th step of the void sky. Zhuowen's gaze was dark. He took a deep breath and suddenly clenched his free left hand. Waves of seemingly solid purple intent appeared in the palm of his left hand and gathered into a purple sword that flickered with purple light. This purple sword was a long sword formed from the 6th level Dao intent, and Zhuowen's aura rapidly increased under the support of the Dao intent. Charge! With 2 violet swords in hand, Zhuowen fiercely slashed out, and all the other cultivators that flashed over to besiege him were slashed flying. Then, Zhuowen stomped his right foot and suddenly shot towards the 2 cultivators of the 6th step of the void sky. You're courting death! The 2 cultivators of the 6th step of the void sky were full of cold smiles. They both used their divine abilities and blasted them in front of Zhuowen in an attempt to block his path. The black-clothed Zhuowen immediately used his innate divine ability, Purgatory. At the same time, he opened the Eye of Heavenly Lightning. Terrifying heavenly lightning shot out and broke through the divine abilities of the 2 cultivators. Rumble! Immediately, the black-robed Zhuowen channeled the heaven-devouring demonic book at a high speed. He then reared his head back and roared. This roar was filled with boundless might and majesty. It was as though the black-robed Zhuowen was a noble existence that was above everyone else in this place. The 2 cultivators clearly did not expect the black-clothed Zhuowen to let out such a deafening roar and were momentarily stunned. Zhuowen closed in and the purple swords in his hands transformed into 2 rings of purple light as he stood firmly in front of the 2 cultivators. The purple sword was as fast as the wind, as if it was an illusion. The 7th move of the Tao of Destruction sword technique, sword swimming through the great void. Zhuowen muttered in a low voice. In the blink of an eye, he passed by the 2 cultivators and broke the arms of the 2 who were still in a daze. These 2 swords were too mysterious. Coupled with Devour's roar, Yuan was able to easily cut off the arms of the 2 6th-step void sky cultivators. Zhuowen did not continue fighting. After passing through the obstruction of the 2 cultivators, he quickly brought the black-clothed Zhuowen down to the bottom of the nether hall. As for Xiao He, after seeing Zhuowen escape, she erupted with terrifying lightning and fire energy and charged out of the encirclement. Along the way, she killed many cultivators and caught up to Zhuowen. When the white-haired old man completely blocked the energy from the explosion of the divine artifact and turned around, he could no longer see Zhuowen and the others. Instead, it was the people he brought with him who were either injured or dead. Immediately notify all the disciples of the Dim Mirage sect to intercept that intruder, the white-haired old man said furiously. The others hurriedly took out their communication jade talismans and notified the disciples in charge. In just an instant, the Dim Mirage sect became jittery. Many disciples came out of seclusion to capture Zhuowen. After setting up several killing arrays at the entrance of the nether hall, Yuan left the nether hall. As soon as Zhuowen left the perimeter of the nether hall, he saw a group of Dim Mirage sect disciples heading his way. Apart from that, there were many disciples everywhere. They had formed their own groups and were constantly patrolling the area. At that moment, the security of the Dim Mirage sect was several dozen times tighter than when Zhuowen had first entered. Basically, all the people of the Dim Mirage sect had been mobilized. Intruder, kill. The group patrolling at the front immediately noticed Zhuowen, who had emerged from the Forbidden Grounds. The cultivator at the head of the group immediately gave the order to kill. Zhuan's gaze was cold. Right now, he needed to leave the Dim Mirage sect as quickly as possible. Once the experts of the Dim Mirage sect caught up to him, it would be rather difficult for him to leave. Zhuan really did not take the Dim Mirage sect disciples before him seriously. The 48 demonic golden swords suddenly shot out. Every single one of them could kill a person. When the entire sword formation was mobilized, all the disciples in the group were killed off in an instant. Unfortunately, the disturbance on Zhuan's side had completely alarmed the other groups nearby. One after another, teams converged towards this side, blocking off Zhuan's path of escape. Zhuan's face was sunken as he charged forward with the black-robed Zhuan. He needed to leave the Dim Mirage sect before those old fellows left the Nether Hall. Kill! Zhuan struck out without any warning, and he showed no mercy at all. Wherever he passed, most of the Dim Mirage sect disciples were not a match for a single move from Zhuan. Corpses rained down from the sky of the Dim Mirage sect like raindrops. Unfortunately, enough ants could bite an elephant to death. Most of the Dim Mirage sect disciples were not a match for Zhuan. However, this was the headquarters of the Dim Mirage sect, their territory. There were countless disciples here. Zhuan killed wave after wave, basically turning the Dim Mirage sect into a bloodbath. Spurt! Countless abilities and god artifacts flew over, blasting away the demonic golden swords around Zhuan. He vomited a mouthful of blood as his face paled. However, Zhuan did not give himself any time to catch his breath. He continued to swing the violet swords in his hands as his 6th level Dao Intense constantly poured out, increasing his strength as he killed wave after wave of Dim Mirage sect disciples. We're about to reach the exit. Just hold on a little longer. Zhuan's main body was covered in blood, and the blood stain at the corner of his lips was a ghastly sight. Even the black-robed Zhuan was not in a particularly good state. No matter how powerful the two of them were, it was impossible for them to remain unscathed when surrounded by so many Dim Mirage sect disciples. Currently, countless cultivators had gathered around the star where the Dim Mirage sect resided. Most of them were independent cultivators and disciples of other smaller organizations. When the countless cultivators had shot out of the Dim Mirage sect and formed groups to patrol, they had already attracted the attention of the nearby cultivators. And when Zhuan charged into the encirclement and killed countless Dim Mirage sect disciples, he had completely shocked these cultivators. They immediately knew that someone had actually barged into the Dim Mirage sect alone to cause trouble. Was he not courting death? Of course, when these cultivators saw how this troublemaking cultivator killed the surrounding Dim Mirage sect disciples like he was cutting grass, they knew that this troublemaking cultivator was not simple. Who is this kid? He actually came to the Dim Mirage sect to cause trouble. Is he not courting death? Why do I feel that this kid is very familiar? I think I've seen him before. That's Zhuan, the independent cultivator who tricked the 8 sect masters in the Middle Universe Galaxy Grand Competition back then. This guy is really bold. Not long after he tricked the 8 sect masters, he actually snuck into the Dim Mirage sect alone to cause trouble. Someone in the crowd immediately recognized Zhuan as his voice was filled with excitement. An uproar broke out amongst the crowd. The name Zhuan had become a household name in this period of time. There was no one who did not know of him. In the star domain, someone who could be jointly wanted by the 8 great sects could not be said to be unheard of in the future, but it was definitely unprecedented. At the very least, before Zhuan, there had truly been no cultivator who had been jointly wanted by the 8 great sections. It was precisely for this reason that Zhuan's name had become a household name in the 8 great sections. Of course, this was not a good reputation. That Zhuan is done for. Look, the disciplinary elders of the Dim Mirage sect have all come. Suddenly, the crowd noticed that in the depths of the Dim Mirage sect, the white-haired old man had already left the Nether Hall and was heading straight for Zhuan with great speed. Zhuan also noticed that the white-haired old man was getting closer and closer behind him and felt anxious. He was still some distance away from the entrance, and his current condition was truly not very good. Just the encirclement of so many Dim Mirage sect disciples was enough to make him suffer, let alone the white-haired old man and the other elders of the Dim Mirage sect. The white-haired old man very quickly noticed the mountainous pile of corpses below, and the flames of fury in his chest surged. The white-haired old man stared at Jun with bloodshot eyes as he roared, "You're looking to die. You've killed so many of my dim mirage sect disciples. I'll make you pay with your blood." With that, the white-haired old man took a step forward and arrived behind Jun. With a palm strike, the space around Juon completely distorted. Bang! The Thunderfire sword suddenly flicked, blocking the white-haired old man's palm strike. At the same time, he sent a message to Juon, "Kid, hurry up and leave. I'll block this old man for you." However, Juon smiled bitterly. He had truly miscalculated this time. The Dim Mirage sect was not as weak as he had imagined. After all, it was one of the 10 great sections. He had underestimated it too much, resulting in him being surrounded and unable to escape. "Kill him." The white-haired old man ordered the dozen or so elders behind him. Swish, swish, swish. Immediately, the dozen or so elders shot towards Jun. At the same time, the surrounding Dim Mirage sect disciples also became excited, and their attacks became even more concentrated and terrifying. The two people at the head of the dozen or so elders were the two experts whose arms had been chopped off by Juon earlier. Now, their severed arms had already completely recovered. After all, at their level of cultivation, as long as it was not a fatal injury or internal injury, they would basically be able to recover very quickly. Juon's gaze was cold as he suddenly took out the soul-absorbing god needle and shot it towards one of the cultivators. The cultivator sneered. He did not particularly care about the soul-absorbing god needle, and with a pinch of the sword in his right hand, he caught the soul-absorbing god needle between his fingers. In his view, the Juon's cultivation was even lower than his, so how powerful could his soul be? Thus, he did not care at all. The moment this cultivator caught the soul-absorbing god needle, Juon detonated all 300 divine soul galaxies in his spiritual space. At this moment, his soul had become terrifyingly powerful, and it suddenly acted on the soul-absorbing god needle. Swish! The powerful force of the soul-absorbing god needle directly annihilated the cultivator's sword finger, and then it sank into the cultivator's forehead. The cultivator's soul was instantly destroyed, and the powerful spiritual sense attached to the soul-absorbing god needle exploded, completely destroying the cultivator's body. Even the virtual sky bridge was not spared. Chapter 2059. Exposing the heavenly domain starry sky essence. The moment the 300 divine soul galaxies in his spiritual space were shattered, Juon swallowed a drop of heavenly domain starry sky essence that he had long prepared. His spiritual space, which had been severely injured due to the destruction of the divine soul galaxies, instantly recovered after Juon swallowed the heavenly domain starry sky essence. At this moment, the surroundings immediately fell silent. No one had expected that one of the two elders of the Shentian Sixth Ascension that had remained in the Dark Mirage sect would be killed just like that. This had exceeded everyone's expectations. "Let's attack together and kill this bastard." The white-haired old man almost went mad with anger as he roared. A sixth-step Void Sky Elder was already considered an overlord in the Heaven Domain. Even in their dark fantasy sect, there were not many experts of such cultivation. This time, apart from Uwusi taking away 7 or 8 sixth-step Void Sky Elders, their dark fantasy sect only had these two. Now that one of them had died, it was definitely a great blow to the dark fantasy sect. Receiving the white-haired old man's order, the surrounding disciples of the dark fantasy sect instantly went crazy. Together with the dozen or so elders, they used various divine abilities and divine weapons to attack Juon's vital points. Juon's eyes were cold. Before, he was still a little worried that the heavenly domain starry sky essence would be exposed, but now in this almost hopeless situation, Juon knew that he could not survive without using the heavenly domain starry sky essence. At this moment, he did not care whether the heavenly domain starry sky essence would be exposed or not. He took out a jade bottle, took a big gulp, and held it in his mouth. This gulp contained nearly 100 drops, enough to heal his fatal injuries nearly 100 times. The black-clothed Juon also took a gulp and immediately fought a bloody battle with his main body. Because of the heavenly domain starry sky essence, His main body and his doppelganger were almost fighting with their lives on the line. They simply did not care about the attacks coming from the surroundings. As long as it was not a fatal injury, Yuan almost did not dodge, and only sought to quickly defeat the enemy. Bang, bang, bang. In just an instant, like farmers cutting grass, one corpse after another fell from the sky above the dark fantasy sect. The moment Yuan was injured, he immediately grabbed a drop of heavenly domain's starry sky essence from his mouth, and the black-clothed Yuan naturally did the same. How is that possible? This guy has suffered so many fatal blows, how can he still be so lively? The other Void Sky Six Steps cultivator looked at Yuan in disbelief. His pupils constricted into needles, and a sense of fear rose in his heart. Sun and moon rise. Yuan slashed out with both his purple swords. One of the swords turned into a purple moon while the other turned into a purple sun. The purple moon and the purple sun simultaneously rose up behind him, and then the surrounding space instantly collapsed. Most of the nearby dim mirage sect disciples were killed. Yuan stomped on the ground with his right foot. He did not care about the countless divine powers that were coming at him again. The no-beginning devil golden sword was like a loyal guard as it circled around his body, blocking all the attacks coming at him. Even if the attacks from the outside world were too powerful and broke through the defense of the golden sword of no beginning and blasted onto Zhuowen's body, as long as they were not fatal, he could not be bothered to dodge. In an instant he arrived in front of Elder Su Tian Lu Deng. "You're courting death." The Elder Su Tian Lu Deng reacted. His eyes flashed with a sinister light as he slashed out with both his blades. Two terrifying blades of qi that seemed to cross the horizon tore through the sky and slashed in front of Yuan with a boom. Boom. The no-beginning devil golden sword that circled around Yuan was instantly destroyed, and Yuan grunted as the blade qi slashed at his chest. A gash several dozen inches deep appeared on his chest. The internal organs near his chest had been completely chopped to pieces. The Elder Su Tian Lu Deng saw Zhuowen's terrifying wounds and sneered inside. He felt that this kid was dead for sure this time. But then, he discovered to his shock that the terrifying wound on this kid's chest was rapidly healing at a visible rate. How is that possible? How did you do it? Su Tian Liudeng's elder cried out in alarm and attacked Zhuowen with both of his blades without any regard for his life. Zhuowen's main body resisted the terrifying blade qi with difficulty. Although his body was riddled with scars, he was able to heal quickly every time. He was like a cockroach that couldn't be killed. At this moment, the elder Su Tian Lu Deng was truly frightened, and his attacks became chaotic. He wasn't afraid of facing a strong enemy, but facing a strange guy that couldn't be killed no matter how he attacked, he was truly afraid. Rumble. The moment the elder Su Tian Lu Deng panicked, the black-clothed Zhuowen rushed out of the endless attacks and arrived behind the elder. The instant the black-clothed Zhuowen swallowed the heavenly domain star essence and healed his injuries, he clenched his right hand. A terrifying devouring force combined with the power of extreme lightning formed a black hole that heavily smashed into the elder's back. "Elder Chen, watch your back." A white-robed elder followed closely behind the black-clothed Zhuowen. His expression changed slightly as he couldn't help but shout. Unfortunately, he was too late. The devouring lightning had already smashed into the elder Su Tian Lu Deng's back. Pucci! The elder Su Tian Lu Deng was caught off guard and spat out a mouthful of blood. His movement of slashing out blade qi instantly stopped. The eyes of Zhuowen's main body, who was in the midst of the terrifying blade qi, flashed as he destroyed another 300 divine soul galaxies without hesitation and activated the soul-absorbing God Needle again. The soul-absorbing God Needle was extremely fast. The elder was still in pain from being struck by the devouring lightning and simply wasn't prepared for this move of Zhuowen's. The soul-absorbing God Needle sank into the elder's forehead, and then the terrifying power of divine sense stirred up his divine soul space like a storm, shattering his divine soul space. Even the Su Tian Lu Deng's divine soul space was unable to survive. The moment this elder Su Tian Lu Deng also fell, the other disciples of the Dim Mirage sect finally began to feel fear. Some of them even quietly retreated, staring fearfully at the sloppy youth bathed in blood in front of them. Enforcement Elder. The other elders retreated to the side of the white-haired elder, staring at Zhuowen's main body and doppelganger with fear. The white-haired elder punched the Thunderfire sword back and looked at the two dead elders Su Tian Lu Deng with an ugly expression. "Who the hell are you?" the white-haired elder asked fearfully. Zhuon sneered, "Come on, why don't you continue? I've killed so many people of your dim mirage sect, why are you all scared now? Aren't you going to avenge your dead brothers?" Hun simply drank another mouthful of Heavenly Domain Star Essence, and then threw it to the black-clothed Hun. The latter drank the last bit of Heavenly Domain Star Essence in the jade bottle and held it in his mouth. Heavenly Domain Star Essence. You must be that Zhuon. The white-haired elder finally guessed what was in the jade bottle. This person's performance just now was really too strange. He had clearly been fatally wounded many times and should have died, but every time he was able to recover to his peak and continue to fight as lively as a dragon and a tiger. And there was nothing else that could make him recover to his peak in an instant other than the legendary Heavenly Domain Star Essence. At this moment, there were more and more cultivators gathering outside the Dim Mirage sect, and all of them stared fervently at the blood-soaked figure in the great array of the Dim Mirage sect. From Zhuowen's performance just now, as long as one was not a fool, one could tell that this boy absolutely had a lot of Heavenly Domain Star Essence. It should be known that Zhuon had been fatally wounded at least 100 times, but he was able to recover to his peak each time, which meant that he had taken nearly 100 drops of Heavenly Domain Star Essence in these 100 times. In the outside world, a drop of Heavenly Domain Star Essence was already rare in the world. Even in the auction that shook the entire star domain this time, it was said that only 10 drops of Heavenly Domain Star Essence had been auctioned. But just now, Thuan alone had taken nearly 100 drops, and this did not include Zhuowen's doppelganger. If it was included, it would be nearly 200 drops. 200 drops of Heavenly Domain Star Essence was enough to make the entire star domain go crazy. At this moment, there were already many Void Sky cultivators outside the Dim Mirage sect who had hired dozens of powerful Divine Array Masters to set up an inescapable trap and kill array. Instead, it was the temporary teleportation formation that Zhuowen had secretly set up in a remote area on the outskirts of the Dark Mirage sect that had not been discovered. Fortunately, Zhuowen had set up a concealment formation in the surroundings, or the temporary teleportation formation would definitely have been exposed. The moment he recognized Zhuon, the white-haired elder was first shocked, and then his breathing quickened. If the cultivators outside the Dim Mirage sect could think of it, he could naturally think of it as well. Just now, Zhuon had used Heavenly Domain Star Essence nearly 100 times. And this Zhuon could squander Heavenly Domain Star Essence so casually, it could be seen that this boy must have a lot of it on him. Thinking of this, the white-haired elder impatiently took out a token and sent out a signal. Immediately, he shouted with his divine power, "Everyone, join forces and capture this boy. Once we capture this boy, everyone will be rewarded with 10,000 top-grade divine stones and a level 7 divine medicine. All disciples below the Void Sky realm will have a chance to obtain a Void Ascension pill." Void Ascension pill? Top-grade divine stones? And a level 7 divine medicine. What else are you thinking? Let's kill this boy together. The rewards that the white-haired elder announced were really too tempting, causing the many Dim Mirage sect disciples who had originally retreated to fly toward Zhuon with bloodshot eyes without any regard for their lives. Middle Universe, the star continent where the Great Fortune Trading Company branch was located, was crowded with countless cultivators. At this moment, the inside of the trading company was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Those who could enter the trading company were either cultivators from large forces, experts with high status, or wealthy rogue cultivators. On the auction stage, an enchanting female cultivator, twisting her slender waist, shouted, "The last auction item is the Heavenly Domain Star Essence that everyone has been waiting for. The starting price is 100 million divine stones, and each increment must not be less than 10 million. When the jade bottle containing 10 drops of Heavenly Domain Star Essence was presented, the entire trading company was in an uproar. Then, the price rose rapidly from 100 million to 10 billion, and the momentum of the rise was extremely fierce. In a VIP seat, Yu Wuxi sat quietly in his seat, looking at the constant bids below, and did not participate in the auction. Chapter 2060. Revealing his true body, ancestor, what's wrong? Yu Yewei and the other experts in the VIP seats were puzzled by Yu Wuxi's strange behavior. Yu Wuxi's face was as dark as water. An unconcealable murderous intent exploded in the VIP seats. Yu Yewei and the others felt a chill in their hearts. 1 trillion divine stones. I hope everyone can give me and the Dark Illusion sect some face and let this old man have the heavenly domain starry essence. Yu Wuxi immediately reported all the divine stones he had on him. At the same time, he also reported his name. The entire trading house fell into silence. The bidding price had reached more than 100 billion, but Yu Wuxi had increased it by 1,000 times. How could everyone not be shocked? Moreover, Yu Wuxi had even called out his identity. It was obvious that he was determined to get the heavenly domain starry essence. Many cultivators in the trading house who knew the inside story knew that this Yu Wuxi was not Yu Yewei, but the Dark Illusion sect's ancestor, Yu Wuxi. This was an 8-step void heaven old man. Although he had been seriously injured back then, it was still easy for him to kill a 7-step void heaven cultivator. Who would dare to provoke such a terrifying existence? However, while ordinary cultivators did not dare to provoke him, the other sect masters in the VIP seats of the top 10 sects did not. Senior, you must be joking. The heavenly domain starry essence will naturally go to the highest bidder. I bid 1 trillion divine stones. A calm laughter came from the opposite box. The person who called out a price that exceeded Yu Wuxi's. Yu Wuxi slammed the table beside him and stared at the box with a gloomy gaze. He said coldly, Junior Waning Moon, your half-moon Hall's Yuezu is not here. What right do you have to talk to me like this? As he spoke, a terrifying murderous intent spread out. Then the trading house shook violently. The surrounding boxes were all broken open, revealing the figures of the other sect's cultivators. The half-moon hall cultivators that Waning Moon brought were no exception. Waning Moon frowned slightly. Her beautiful eyes fell on Yu Wuxi. She was surprised that Yu Wuxi was so angry. The cultivators from the other 10 great sects also looked at Yu Wuxi with fear in their eyes as he exuded a murderous aura. All the sect masters of the 10 major sects were present, but none of their old ancestors were present. Only the old ancestor of the Dark Fantasy sect, Yu Wuxi, came to bid for the heavenly domain starry sky essence. It could be said that the Dark Mirage sect was the greatest competitor of the other 9 sects in this auction. Of course, the other 9 great sects weren't afraid that Yu Wuxi would try to rob them. If Yu Wuxi dared to act recklessly, the ancestors of the other 9 great sects would not sit idly by. They would immediately come out of seclusion to deal with Yu Wuxi. There was no fear in Elder Waning Moon's beautiful eyes. She calmly said, an auction is won by the highest bidder. If Senior Nether wants to snatch it, then I have nothing to say. However, I'll report this matter to Lord Yuezu. Yu Wuxi frowned slightly. Yuezu was the old ancestor of the Half-Moon Hall. Moreover, Yu Wuxi's serious injuries were caused by Yuezu. Although they were both Void Sky 8 Steps experts, Yuezu was extremely talented and powerful. Moreover, he was already at the peak of the Void Sky 8 Steps. Therefore, Yu Wuxi wasn't Yuezu's opponent at that time and was heavily injured. After countless years, Yu Wuxi's injuries were still lingering in his body. On the other hand, Yuezu's strength would only grow stronger. Yu Wuxi didn't have any confidence in facing Yuezu. With a cold snort, Yu Wuxi's right hand reached out and grabbed an old man from the void. Lord, why did you grab this lowly one? The old man asked in fear. Just a moment ago, this old man was still at the back of the auction hall. In the blink of an eye, he was caught by Yu Wuxi without anyone noticing. What kind of great ability did this require? You're the manager of the Great Fortune Trading Company, right? I'm willing to pay 10 trillion divine stones for a drop of heavenly domain star essence in this jade bottle. Is that okay? Although Yu Wuxi's words carried a hint of negotiation, his tone didn't carry the slightest hint of negotiation. Instead, it carried an unquestionable tone. The old man hurriedly nodded and said, Of course, of course. Yu Wuxi nodded and threw the old man onto the auction stage, allowing him to take out a drop of Heavenly Domain Star Essence. After receiving a drop of Heavenly Domain Star Essence, Yu Wuxi straightforwardly paid 10 trillion divine stones and instantly swallowed the Heavenly Domain Star Essence. The moment Yu Wuxi opened his eyes, his aura actually swelled a little. He let out a long whistle and transmitted his voice to Yu Yue. Something big has happened in the sect. Bring everyone back immediately. I'll be heading back first. After saying that, Yu Wuxi disappeared from the trading company. Yu Yue immediately led the many experts of the Dim Illusion sect and left. The actions of the Dim Illusion sect's group naturally aroused the doubts and suspicions of many cultivators in the trading company. Master, Yu Wuxi seems to be in a hurry to return. Did something happen in the Dim Illusion sect? Tong Chime, who was standing behind Elder Waning Moon, asked curiously. Elder Waning Moon shook her head and said, I'm not sure. Let's focus on the remaining Heavenly Domain Star Essence. Seeing that Tong Chime was absent-minded, Elder Waning Moon asked again, Chime, what are you thinking about? I'm not thinking about anything. Let's continue the auction. Tong Chime recovered and said with a smile. Elder Waning Moon nodded and gave Tong Chime a deep look before her gaze fell on the auction. Hun looked coldly at the white-haired old man who had sent the signal. He knew that if he really wanted to break through the encirclement of the Dim Illusion sect, he had to severely injure this old fart. Moreover, he did not have much time left. Yu Wuxi definitely knew what had happened in the Dark Mirage sect. If he continued to delay like this, by the time Yu Wuxi rushed back, leaving would be wishful thinking for him. We have to kill this old fart at all costs. Xiao He, are you confident? Zhuan suddenly transmitted to Xiao He. Xiao He replied, If I erupt with all the power of the Purple Star Sovereign, I am confident that I can severely injure this white-haired old man. However, it will be very difficult to kill him. Moreover, after erupting with all the power of the Purple Star Sovereign, I will also use up all the energy of the extreme lightning and fire in the Thunder Fire Sword. Zhuan nodded. He knew what Xiao He meant. After erupting this time, the Thunder Fire Sword would no longer be able to use the power of the Purple Star Sovereign. This also meant that the 5 times stipulated by the Purple Star Sovereign would all be used up this time. It's fine. I must kill this old fart. Otherwise, we won't be able to leave. Zhuowen's eyes revealed a resolute expression as he glanced at the black-clothed Zhuowen not far away. If Xiao He could kill the white-haired old man, that would be the best. If she could only severely injure him, Nguyen would probably reveal Devour's true body. Devour could only unleash his strongest power when he revealed his true body. Zhuan had already nurtured Devour's doppelganger into True God Extreme Thunder, whose strength was comparable to a 4th-step Void Sky Cultivator. Once he revealed his true body, his strength would stack up with True God Extreme Thunder's strength, and he would probably be comparable to a 6th-step Void Sky Cultivator. If Xiao He could seriously injure the white-haired old man, Nguyen would risk revealing his true body to kill the white-haired old man. Unfolding the torch dragon wings, Zhuan dodged most of the attacks while engaging in a fierce battle with the surrounding Dim Illusion sect disciples. On the other hand, Xiao He dashed out toward the white-haired old man. The white-haired old man sneered. In his opinion, the Thunder Fire Sword was indeed powerful. However, it was at most on par with him. It was almost impossible for it to defeat him. The white-haired old man had already informed Yu Wuxi and the others in Middle Universe. As long as Yu Wuxi rushed over in advance, Yun and his strange sword would not be able to escape. Hence, the white-haired old man needed to stall for time. The white-haired old man wielded a divine spear and thrust it forward, wanting to block the Thunder Fire Sword. Gotcha! But when the long sword collided with the Thunder Fire Sword, the aura of the Thunder Fire Sword instantly increased by several times. The terrifying energy of thunder and fire circled around the sword, forming a terrifying spiral. It actually shattered the long spear in an instant. Swoosh! The Thunder Fire Sword pierced through the white-haired old man's glabella like a hot knife through butter. Rumble! The white-haired old man's head instantly exploded. Afterwards, a massive illusory bridge rose behind the white-haired old man. This illusory bridge had a total of 9 steps. 7 of them had already been lit up, indicating that the white-haired old man had reached the 7th step of the illusory bridge. The vast energy of the illusory bridge shone down, and the white-haired old man's exploded head began to slowly heal. Kid, to destroy that illusory bridge, this dragon lord has already exploded with all the power of thunder and fire. I'm almost powerless now. Xiao He suddenly transmitted to Zhuan. Zhuan instantly slashed out with both swords. Terrifying violet light filled the sky, and the numerous dim illusion sect disciples surrounding him all retreated. The main body glanced at the nearby black-clothed Zhuan. The black-clothed Zhuan nodded and roared at the sky. This roar was like the collapse of a mountain, shaking the hearts of all the cultivators and giving them a feeling of worship. The black-clothed Zhuan no longer concealed himself. His figure grew larger and larger, and eventually turned into a colossus. Like a dark cloud, he hovered above the dim illusion sect, almost shrouding the entire star continent where the dim illusion sect was. The moment Devour released his enormous aura, countless cultivators both inside and outside the dim illusion sect felt a sense of fear rise in their hearts. This was the innate fear of a lower being towards a higher being, a fear that came from the bottom of their hearts. As soon as Devour's main body appeared, all the cultivators of the dim illusion sect subconsciously stopped moving. As for the white-haired old man, because the thunder fire sword had pierced through his glabella, his soul had been damaged. Now, he was being healed by the energy of the illusory bridge, so he was still unconscious. Naturally, he could not feel the terror of Devour. At this moment, Devour's appearance had changed greatly. Lightning surged all over his body, mixed with a dense demonic mist. In the demonic mist, a pair of huge blood-red eyes could be seen. He looked like a terrifying beast from ancient times. Devour glanced indifferently at the illusory bridge of the white-haired old man. Then he stomped his foot, lowered his head, opened his huge mouth, and swallowed the illusory bridge that stretched across the illusory bridge. The terrifying devouring power completely cut off the connection between the white-haired old man and the illusory bridge. Plop. Chapter 2061. Enraged Yu Wushi at this moment, all the cultivators of the dim mirage sect fell into a daze. The white-haired old man was the enforcement elder of the dim mirage sect, the strongest person stationed in the dim mirage sect this time. But now, the strongest person had been killed just like that. It was just too inconceivable. Moreover, what was that giant beast shrouded in dense demonic mist? Its pressure was too terrifying, suppressing many disciples of the dim mirage sect, causing them to tremble and not dare to move recklessly. Zhuan leaped up and landed on Devour's body, looking down at the many trembling disciples of the dim mirage sect. My name is Zhuan. If any of you still want to kill me, come, continue to attack me. Zhuan's indifferent voice sounded faintly. The response to Zhuan was silence. Even the enforcement elder of the dim mirage sect had died in this person's hands, not to mention them. Moreover, this person had a heaven-defying item like the heavenly domain starry sky essence, and a large quantity at that. Every time he was heavily injured, he could rely on the heavenly domain starry sky essence to quickly recover to his peak. How could they fight him? Zhuan's gaze fell on the outside of the dim mirage sect. He naturally saw that many wandering cultivators had laid down a death trap array outside the dim mirage sect. Rumble! Devour suddenly struck out with a claw, causing numerous ripples to appear on the surface of the dim mirage sect. This was the great defensive array of the dim mirage sect. Although Devour had revealed his true strength and was unparalleled, this was the great defensive array of the dim mirage sect that had been laid down for countless years. It was almost impossible for him to destroy it. Of course, if Zhuan had followed the original path and returned to the exit he had used to enter the dim mirage sect, he could still leave the dim mirage sect. However, now that he had even used the Devour body, he naturally did not intend to use that exit. Still not opening your great defensive array? Zhuan coldly looked at the remaining 7 or 8 elders not far away. In the previous battle, several elders had died at Zhuan's hands, leaving only these 7 or 8 elders alive. These 7 to 8 elders trembled in fear as they looked at Zhuan. One of the elders said in a trembling voice, "The sect protecting Grand Array was mainly controlled by the disciplinary elder. Now that he is dead, we can't open it with just us, so." Zhuan squinted, reaching out his right hand. With Devour's power, the rolling demon mist turned into a giant hand, grabbing the elder who had just spoken. "You're lying." Zhuan's eyes were cold and gloomy. Soon after, a terrifying demonic mist shackled this person. Then his enormous divine sense unceremoniously invaded this person's spiritual space. Opening his eyes, Zhuan's expression was unsightly. He took a jade talisman from the man's body. The light from the jade talisman slowly faded away. Clearly, someone had just sent a message to this man. He probed the jade talisman with his divine sense. There was only one sentence inside: "Delay the Zhuan. This old man will be back soon." Who sent the message? Zhuan looked at the person indifferently. The person trembled and stammered, "I don't know." "You don't know?" Zhuan's eyes were gloomy and cold. Just as he was about to continue speaking, a vast divine sense extended over from the other side of the star continent, followed by a suffocating and terrifying aura. "Ignorant brat, quickly surrender and hand over everything you've obtained. Otherwise, this old man will exterminate your 9 generations and consign everyone related to you to eternal damnation." A thunderous voice rang out from extremely far away in the starry sky, exploding in the minds of every cultivator. Zhuan frowned. This sound was mainly targeted at him, and it was actually attacking his divine sense. Unfortunately, his spiritual space was much more powerful than ordinary void sky cultivators. This person's spiritual space was indeed powerful, but it would not be so easy to injure Zhuan's spiritual space. On the other hand, the many independent cultivators gathered around the dim illusion sect were momentarily dazed by this voice. "The ancestor has returned. We're saved." The disciples of the dim illusion sect who had originally sunk into despair all glowed with hope, revealing different expressions on their faces. Even the elder whose neck was being held by Zhuan relaxed. He could not help but sneer coldly at Tun. "The ancestor of our dim illusion sect has returned. If you know what's good for you, let go of me. Otherwise, you really won't have the slightest chance of survival." Noisy. Zhuan could not be bothered with the elder's threat. With a thought, surging demonic chi enveloped the person. With a miserable shriek, the person was completely devoured by the devouring demonic chi. "What audacity! You actually dare to kill a member of my dim illusion sect in front of this seat." Yu Wuxi's gloomy voice rang out again. This time, it was even louder, as if it was right in front of him. Zhuan's lips were filled with a mocking smile. Others might not know, but he knew that Yu Wuxi was still some distance away from the dim illusion sect. Zhuan's current divine sense was enough to cross the distance of 300 galaxies. He could even detect Yu Wuxi's exact location. He knew that it would probably take some time for Yu Wuxi to arrive here. "Why wouldn't I dare?" Zhuan and Devour roared. The terrifying demonic mist covered the entire dark fantasy sect in just a blink of an eye. Inside the demonic mist, devouring vortexes moved like venomous snakes, attacking the dark fantasy sect's disciples around. Some of the weaker disciples were basically finished off by the devouring vortexes. As for the stronger disciples, they could barely resist the devouring vortexes that suddenly appeared around them. Zhuan hid within the demonic chi. His right hand held the glorious amethyst galaxy sword. His left hand held the purple sword condensed from 6 Dao Intense. His body was surrounded by the golden sword of no beginning as he shuttled through the demonic chi like a ghost. Didn't Yu Wuxi not allow him to kill the dim illusion sect disciples? Today, he would slaughter all these dark mirage sect disciples under the control of Yu Wuxi's divine sense. Zhuan's first target was the remaining 7 elders. Devour didn't hold back at all. He attached the energy of extreme lightning to the demonic chi, making it impossible to guard against. Devour even released his 2 great divine abilities, Purgatory and Heavenly Thunder Eye. One after another, the dim illusion sect disciples fell. Even the most powerful disciples found it much harder to resist. Pucci. Pucci. Zhuowen's real body was like a ghost. Sword after sword, as fast as lightning, the dim illusion sect disciples fell one after another. In the end, he arrived in front of the 7 elders. The golden sword of no beginning turned into a massive killing intent vortex and smashed towards them. The 7 elders naturally wouldn't sit still and wait for death. They all took action, wanting to block the killing intent vortex. Unfortunately, the killing intent vortex was too powerful. It killed the first 3 in an instant. However, at the cost of sacrificing 3 elders, the killing intent vortex was stopped. Zhuowen dashed out from behind the still whirlpool of killing intent. The soul-absorbing godly needle shot out and drilled into the forehead of the 4th elder without any warning, destroying his soul and illusory heavenly bridge, killing him completely. At the same time, Zhuowen wielded the purple sword in both hands, performing the 7th move of the Tao-destroying sword art, Sword Swimming Great Void. The profound sword art was like an illusory streamer. In a flash, it slashed across the necks of the remaining 3 elders, chopping off their heads. Zhuowen's powerful divine sense invaded their bodies without hesitation, destroying their illusory bridge. After killing the 7 elders, Yun jumped up and landed on Devour's back. His divine sense had detected that Yu Wuxi was very close to this place. "Little bastard, you're dead. If I, Yu Wuxi, don't kill you today, I'm not a man." A thunderous roar came rushing over. With Yu Wuxi's powerful divine sense, he could clearly detect everything that had happened here. At this place, there were 15 elders of the dark fantasy sect. Now, all of them had been killed by Zhuowen alone. Moreover, the number of disciples of the dark fantasy sect that had died was innumerable. Now, he could only detect a few disciples of the dark fantasy sect. The disciples of the sect were the foundation of the sect. Among them, there were many talented geniuses with limitless future achievements. Now that most of these talented disciples had been killed by Zhuowen, the future development of his Dark Mirage sect would enter a blank period, and it would be very difficult for him to recover. These were the seeds of the dark fantasy sect's rise and fall. Now, almost all of them had been killed. How could Yu Wuxi not be angry? Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. In his divine sense, Yu Wuxi's speed suddenly increased. He would arrive here soon. Zhuowen knew that he could not stay here any longer. Otherwise, if he really bumped into Yu Wuxi, it would be too late for him to leave. After all, Yu Wuxi was an old monster of the Void Sky 8 Steps. It was impossible for him to be his opponent. Thinking of this, Yun retrieved Devour's real body. Soon after, the torch dragon wings unfolded and flew to the exit he had made. Walking out of the exit, Zhuowen immediately activated the temporary teleportation formation and left the dark fantasy sect in a flash. Not long after Zhuowen left the teleportation formation, a terrifyingly imposing figure streaked across the starry sky like a shooting star and smashed into the star continent where the dark fantasy sect was located. The entire continent began to tremble. The numerous rogue cultivators on the continent were horrified as they stared blankly at Yu Wuxi. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. It should be known that Yu Wuxi was an old monster of the Void Sky 8 Steps. He was a supreme expert that rogue cultivators like them could not hope to reach. Who would dare to provoke him? Yu Wuxi did not have time to check the dark fantasy sect. His eyes were fixed on Zhuowen, who had already left through the temporary teleportation formation. "Where do you think you're going? Today, even if you run to the ends of the earth, this old man will catch you and bring you back to die." Yu Wuxi growled. He leaped up, following the fluctuations of the teleportation formation, disappearing at an extremely fast speed. That Zhuowen is really bold. In front of an expert like Yu Wuxi, he dares to kill the disciples of the dark fantasy sect. I feel that this kid has guts. Since he has already killed the people of the dark fantasy sect, what's the harm in killing a few more? However, the dark fantasy sect has suffered a great loss this time. 15 elders and countless disciples. I'm afraid it will take at least 1,000 years for them to recover. Chapter 2062. Danger Zone. Somewhere in the starry sky, a formless ripple appeared, and Zhuowen's figure appeared. Zhuowen looked around, and his expression suddenly changed. Within the range of his divine sense, he could see Yu Wuxi hurrying over. "Little bastard, you can't run." Yu Wuxi's furious voice rang out, and a large hand silently appeared behind Jun. Zhuowen hurriedly activated the temporary teleportation array again and disappeared from the spot. The huge hand had missed its target. Outside the Dark Mirage sect, he had set up many temporary teleportation formations that were continuously connected. Once he was transported out of the first transportation array, he would continue to be transported one after another until he reached the destination of the last temporary transportation array. Cunning brat, you actually set up so many temporary transportation arrays, but you still can't escape from this lord's palm. Yu Wuxi's gaze was as cold as a venomous snake's. He glanced indifferently at Jun, who had disappeared before his eyes, and snorted coldly. Following the ripple of the transportation array, he rushed out once again. Just like that, Jun and Yu Wuxi chased each other across almost half of Dongyu. Cold sweat gradually appeared on Zhuowen's forehead. Yu Wuxi's divine sense had firmly locked onto him. No matter where he used the transportation array to teleport to, he would be found by Yu Wuxi's divine sense, which would then chase after him. This time, Zhuowen's transportation array's destination was set on the planet where Yun Chuyu and Hong Shan were. Originally, Zhuowen had planned to teleport away after rescuing Yin Bingyun, directly taking Yun Chuyu and Hong Shan with him. However, now that he had been targeted by this old fellow, Yu Wuxi, Zhuowen knew that the situation had become somewhat troublesome. After activating the last transportation array, Zhuowen teleported back to the planet where Yun Chuyu and Hong Shan were. Without saying a word, he waved his hand and put Yun Chuyu and Hong Shan, who were still in the room, into his spirit ring. Then Zhuowen unfurled his torch dragon wings and instantly left the planet, rushing towards the border of the star field. The torch dragon phantoms attached to the torch dragon wings had already matured. Each of them was strong and mighty, constantly wrapping around the torch dragon wings, increasing its speed by several times. Not long after Zhuowen left the planet, Yu Wuxi arrived. He glanced at Zhuowen's back and grinned. "Looks like the transmission array has been used up. Now, prepare to die." After saying that, Yu Wuxi disappeared and charged at Zhuowen. The distance between him and Zhuowen was getting closer and closer. Zhuowen's gaze was dark as he waved his right hand, and a thick purple intent adhered to the illumination dragon wings on his back like maggots. After receiving the blessing of Dao insight, the 9 torch dragon phantoms attached to the torch dragon wings seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. They instantly became excited and violent, constantly roaring. The speed of the torch dragon wings also increased rapidly as they carried Zhuowen through the starry sky. One could only vaguely see a hazy purple shadow. The distance that had been constantly shortening because of Yu Wuxi was no longer shortening at this moment. Instead, it was faintly widening. Yu Wuxi's pupils shrank as he looked in surprise at the purple light on the surface of the torch dragon wings on Zhuowen's back. He knew that this boy's sudden increase in speed was due to this purple light. Interesting, this boy really has a big secret on him. The heavenly domain starry sky essence, the colossal beast avatar, and this mysterious and strange purple power, but all of these will soon be mine. Yu Wuxi's eyes were blazing. At this moment, the miserable state of the Dark Illusion sect had long been thrown to the back of his mind. Now, his eyes were only focused on the things on Zhuowen. The value of the heavenly domain starry sky essence alone was enough to completely offset all the things that Zhuowen had done in the Dark Illusion sect. Thinking of this, Yu Wuxi stretched out his skinny hands and continuously formed strange seals before finally blasting them in front of his chest. Frick, frick. Suddenly, Yu Wuxi's entire body emitted a strange sound of bones dislocating. Then, the veins on his forehead bulged and the bones on his back drilled out of his flesh. On both sides of his back, a pair of incomparably huge bone wings grew. This pair of bone wings was extremely strange. On both sides of the bone wings were 2 eerie white skulls. Moreover, the hollow eyes of these 2 skulls were suffused with a green ghost fire. The moment the bone wings grew, Yu Wuxi's right foot stomped on the ground and his speed instantly increased by several times. Zhuowen, who had just pulled away from Yu Wuxi with great difficulty, naturally saw Yu Wuxi's speed increase behind him and his heart sank to the extreme. Little bastard, you killed so many of my Dark Illusion sect's disciples and you want to leave just like that? Do you think that's possible? Yu Wuxi leaped a few times and appeared above Zhuan. His skinny right hand suddenly pressed down and countless black bone hands condensed into numerous black bone hands that pierced toward Zhuan's back. Zhuan's eyes were gloomy as he immediately summoned the no-beginning demon gold sword to block his back. Bang! Unfortunately, although the no-beginning demon gold sword was powerful, it was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot in the face of Yu Wuxi's powerful attack. Puchi! The no-beginning demon gold sword was blasted away and Zhuan spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body flew backwards and a trace of dispiritedness appeared in his eyes. Die! Yu Wuxi's eyes were filled with disdain. In his opinion, this Zhuan was simply too weak. The bone hand's momentum did not decrease as they continued to sweep towards Zhuan's vitals. This attack was enough to destroy Zhuan's body and soul. Zhuan's eyes were gloomy as he immediately released the black-clothed Zhu. A terrifying extreme lightning energy manifested into a huge lightning fist that heavily smashed against the bone hands. Crackle! The bone hands that had been like a hot knife through butter were forced to a halt by the lightning fist. Zhuan took advantage of this opportunity to escape with the black-clothed Zhuan. Yu Wuxi was too strong. He was a powerful existence at the Void Sky 8th step. The white-haired old man that Zhuan had killed before was at the Void Sky 7th step. Zhuan had barely managed to kill that white-haired old man with the help of the Purple Star Sovereign's power in the Thunder Fire Sword. However, Yu Wuxi was different. If he wanted to kill that white-haired old man, it would be as easy as flipping his hand. Now that Zhuan was facing such a powerful existence, he had no chance of winning. Even his chances of survival were pitifully low. You can't escape. Yu Wuxi's mouth was full of ridicule. He once again urged his bone wings to catch up with Zhuan. The bone hands once again struck out and sent the black-clothed Zhuan flying. At the same time, Zhuan's internal organs felt like they were about to shift. After taking a drop of Heavenly Domain Star Essence, Zhuan recovered to his peak state and continued to flee. It really is the Heavenly Domain Star Essence. At first, the Enforcement Elders said that you had a lot of Heavenly Domain Star Essence. I didn't believe him at first, but now I do. Seeing Zhuan recover to his peak state in an instant, Yu Wuxi's eyes blazed with passion. He couldn't wait to capture Zhuan. However, Zhuan was too cunning. Although Yu Wuxi was faster than Zhuan, there was a limit to how fast he could be. He could only use his attacks to disturb Zhuan and slow him down. I'm not going to play with you anymore. Yu Wuxi's mouth curled into a sinister smile. His bone wings suddenly spread open and the two skulls on both ends of his bone wings opened their mouths and spat out two oily green ghost flames. These oily green flames didn't have the slightest bit of temperature. On the contrary, they gave off a bone-piercing chill. Zhuan was extremely sensitive to this kind of chill. He had felt this kind of chill on the 3rd floor of the Nether Hall, and the source of that chill was the ice lotus that he had taken away. These two ghost flames were too terrifying. Zhuan's real body didn't dare to face them directly. He immediately asked the black-clothed Zhuan to reveal his real body. He opened his bloody mouth and swallowed the ghost flames. However, Devour wasn't in a good condition. The two ghost flames were moving around in his body, which even affected his god soul. Zhuan spurted out a mouthful of blood, his face pale. Just as he was about to spit out the ghost flames, the ice lotus that he had swallowed into his body suddenly absorbed the two ghost flames. This ice lotus was terrifying. Zhuan had purposely placed it in the outermost area of his body. As for the deepest area, it was where the Z-Way galaxy and the heavenly armor star were located, so the ice lotus couldn't affect them. This thing can absorb Yu Wuxi's attack. Excellent. Zhuan's eyes brightened. He immediately flapped his torch dragon wings and fled. Yu Wuxi furrowed his brows, coldly looking at Devour's giant body. He was surprised and muttered, "It's Devour. I didn't expect it to be Devour. This kid has so many secrets. I didn't expect him to have a mount like Devour. This kid must be killed. These things can only belong to me." Then, Yu Wuxi's attacks became fiercer. However, Zhuowen's devouring power had swallowed them all. However, Devour's devouring power wasn't omnipotent. Yu Wuxi's attacks were still beyond Devour's endurance. Zhuon could clearly feel that Devour's bodily functions were weakening as Yu Wuxi's attacks became fiercer. It can't continue like this. Devour will get hurt sooner or later. Zhuowen's heart sank to the bottom. Eventually, Devour turned into a cluster of black mist, entering Zhuowen's spirit ring. Zhuowen immediately sent the heavenly star marrow into the ring, asking Devour to swallow it. However, he found that Devour could only recover a part of its power. It couldn't recover instantly. Is it because Devour's body structure is different from humans? Is it because the heavenly star marrow doesn't have much effect on it? Zhuowen's eyes were dark like water. If that was the case, he was done for. Devour was his strongest clone, which was much stronger than his real body. However, Devour couldn't recover in a short time, which was a fatal problem for Zhuon. Devour's severely wounded. You don't need to use the heavenly star marrow to heal him. Although the heavenly star marrow has a great effect, it's only effective to humans who don't have a big body. Devour's body is too big. One drop of the heavenly star marrow isn't enough. Yu Wuxi sneered, waving his right hand. Countless bone thorns flew toward Zhuon like a storm. Chapter 2063. 7 Dao Intense Puqi. A bloody hole appeared between Zhuowen's eyebrows. However, at the moment of his death, Yuan immediately swallowed the heavenly domain starry essence that he had kept in his mouth. Yu Wuxi snorted coldly as he watched Zhuon recover in an instant. He didn't seem to care at all as he launched another terrifying attack. The surrounding bone spikes rained down like rain, forming a wall of bone spikes that sealed the space around Zhuon. It was impossible for Zhuon to break through this terrifying wall of bone spikes in a short period of time. Yu Wuxi's attacks became faster and faster. Every attack was enough to tear Zhuon to shreds. However, Zhuon was like a tenacious cockroach. Every time he was on the verge of death, he would quickly swallow the heavenly domain starry essence. Moreover, the moment Yu Wuxi tried to grab him, he would immediately use the torch dragon wings to dodge. This caused Zhuon and Yu Wuxi to be in a stalemate for a while. However, Zhuon was smiling bitterly in his heart. He knew that this stalemate couldn't last for long. In this short period of time, he had almost walked through the gates of hell more than 10 times. However, the more dangerous the situation was, the more focused Zhuowen's mind was. He repeatedly used the 6th level Dao intent. The purple intent spread around his body, causing his figure to become hazy and indistinct. Yu Wuxi frowned slightly as the coldness in his eyes intensified. Moreover, he didn't want to continue fighting with Zhuon. With a cold snort, Yu Wuxi crossed his hands and rapidly formed a hand seal. Then, a ray of dim light burst out from his hand seal. It was extremely fast and disappeared in a flash, entering the purple intent. Wherever the dim light passed, the purple intent dispersed and disappeared without a trace. Then, Zhuowen's figure was revealed within the purple intent. Zhuon stared fixedly at the dim light. He felt a fatal threat from this dim light. It was as if he was hit by this dim light, he would definitely die. As the dim light got closer, the threat of death grew stronger. Although Zhuon still had the heavenly domain starry sky essence in his mouth, his intuition told him that even the heavenly domain starry sky essence would not be able to save him if he was hit by this dim light. No, I can't be hit by this attack. Otherwise, I'll definitely die. Zhuon believed in his instincts. He could feel the terror of this dim light. Most likely, Yu Wuxi was no longer holding back. Zhuon wanted to escape, but he discovered that Yu Wuxi's terrifying pressure was firmly suppressing him. It was like a vast mountain pressing down on an ant. No matter how hard this ant tried, it was simply impossible for him to escape the heavy pressure of this vast mountain. As the dim light got closer and closer, cold sweat dripped down Zhuowen's forehead. The threat of death enveloped Zhuowen's heart, causing Zhuowen's heart to sink to the extreme. At this moment, Yuan was like a drowning person that desperately urged the energy of his Dao insight. A terrifying purple will burst out from Zhuowen's body like blazing sunlight and shot out in all directions. Even so, it was still useless. The dim light ignored the power of the purple will and continued to shorten the distance between it and Zhuan. Once the dim light sank into the depths of Zhuan's forehead, Zhuan knew that he was finished. Extreme unwillingness caused Zhuan to involuntarily growl. He was unwilling to die like this. He still had many unfinished business. He still had to save his wife, Mu Chenxue. He had promised to go to Six Desires Heaven to find Moyan Wushang in the future. He had also promised Yun Chuyu and the others that he would send them safely back to Brahma Star. How could he die like this? I won't accept this. Zhuan roared to the sky. Suddenly, the purple will around him began to boil. The purple will that had originally collapsed condensed and reformed. It became denser and denser until it finally turned into a purple chi. The purple chi was like a ribbon that shot out and twined around Zhuan's body. The terrifying pressure that had fallen on Zhuan's body suddenly dissipated the moment the purple will turned into purple chi. The 9 torch dragon phantoms attached to the torch dragon wings had completely turned into purple dragons. Their bodies were also several times larger than before. Swoosh! After breaking through Yu Wuxi's pressure, the torch dragon wings spread open. Zhuan's speed was so fast that he disappeared from his spot. Of course, that terrifying dim light missed its target. When he reached the edge of the bone wall, Yuan didn't hesitate to summon Devour's doppelganger. The doppelganger condensed the heavenly devouring devil book and the extreme lightning force, smashing a hole in the bone wall. As for Zhuan, he passed through the hole and instantly disappeared into the distance. Although Yu Wuxi had wounded Devour severely, a drop of the heavenly domain star marrow couldn't restore him to his peak state instantly. However, Yuan had more than one drop of the heavenly domain star marrow. He had dozens of barrels. After drinking a barrel of the heavenly domain star marrow, Devour had recovered to his peak state. That was how he had broken the bone wall with one punch and escaped. Apparently, Yu Wuxi hadn't expected that Zhuan's Dao power would increase all of a sudden. Moreover, the Dao power had counteracted the pressure that he had deliberately released. Moreover, Devour, who he had thought was severely wounded, had recovered to his peak state when Zhuan had let him out. He hadn't expected this at all. Although he knew that Zhuan had a lot of heavenly domain star marrow, Devour's body was too big. If he wanted to heal him instantly, he would need a lot of heavenly domain star marrow. However, Yuan had helped Devour recover to his peak state in just a blink of an eye. Moreover, he had broken the bone wall that Yu Wuxi had set. Now, Yu Wuxi knew that he had underestimated the amount of heavenly domain star marrow that Zhuan had. Instantly, thousands of thoughts crossed Yu Wuxi's mind. Then he waved his sleeves, retrieving the bone wall around him. Then he chased after Zhuan. However, he soon realized that his soul consciousness couldn't find any trace of Zhuan. Looking at the direction he's going, I think he wants to leave the star field. I should go to the heaven receiving stone first. I must catch that little bastard. Yu Wuxi was a little anxious. After knowing that Zhuan might have a huge amount of heavenly domain star marrow, he was even more anxious to capture Zhuan and take everything that Zhuan had. At the moment of life and death, my Dao power has advanced from the 6th level to the 7th level. A purple shadow glided across the starry sky. Zhuan's eyes were filled with fear. Although there was only a difference of 1 level between the 7th and 6th level Dao Intense, the difference in power was like heaven and earth. The 7th, 8th, and 9th level Dao Intense were the higher realms of Dao Intense. With each step, the power of Dao Intense would be stronger, and the amplification effect would naturally be more terrifying. Now, Zhuan had enhanced the torch dragon wings with the power of the 7th level Dao Intent, so his current speed was much faster than before. Zhuan was confident that his current speed might be similar to that of Tai Ching and Yu Qing when they used the earth shrinking technique. Even Yu Wuxi's speed was not as fast as Zhuan's current speed. Otherwise, Zhuan would not have been able to shake off Yu Wuxi's soul consciousness so easily. I have to leave the star field as soon as possible, Zhuan thought as he sped up again. Soon, he arrived at the dock where many airships were located. Zhuan was naturally no stranger to this dock. Back then, he had taken High Heaven Sect's airship and landed near this dock from the Heaven Receiving Stone. However, this dock was relatively close to the star continent where High Heaven Sect was located, so the airship Zhuan was on back then did not stop at this dock. Instead, it flew directly to the star continent where High Heaven Sect was located. The dock was bustling with people coming and going. Many cultivators were entering and exiting the dock in an orderly manner. The moment Jun landed on the dock, a huge airship suddenly swept over from the void in front of him. This airship was completely black and had a strange appearance. At first glance, others would feel fear and trepidation. It's the airship of Dark Mirage Sect. Let's hide quickly. In the dock, many cultivators dodged the moment they saw the strange airship sweeping over with fear in their eyes. The black airship stopped at the dock, and then the cultivators on this airship disembarked one after another. When all the cultivators had disembarked, Wun leisurely stepped onto the airship. For you, the airship has already docked. If you want to go to the Heaven Receiving Stone, wait for the next one. The moment Zhuowen entered the airship, a black-armored cultivator immediately looked at Zhuowen with extreme hostility. Zhuowen did not bother to pay attention to the black-armored cultivator. The glorious purple galaxy sword turned into a purple light and slashed at the man's neck. Pucci. Before this person could even finish speaking, his head was thrown high into the air. You're courting death. After seeing Zhuowen's actions, several black-armored cultivators behind him were shocked and furious. They summoned their respective divine artifacts and attacked Zhuowen. Unfortunately, how could these black-armored cultivators be a match for Zhuowen? In less than 10 breaths, all the cultivators on the airship were killed by Zhuowen. Moreover, all the corpses on the airship were thrown out by Zhuowen. He then entered the control cabin and controlled the airship to take off again and rush towards the Heaven Receiving Stone. On the dock, many cultivators stared blankly at the Mystic Illusion Sect cultivators on the airship that had been killed. They obviously did not expect that such a ruthless person would suddenly appear and snatch the Mystic Illusion Sect's airship the moment he arrived. Not long after Zhuowen drove the airship away from the dock, Yu Wuxi had already arrived. He saw the Mystic Illusion Sect cultivators' corpses piled up like a small mountain in the middle of the dock, and his eyelids twitched. Then, under the mountain of corpses, there were a few lines of words written in blood. Old man, it's not that easy to kill this young master. Back when this young master first came to the Heaven Receiving Stone, I tore down your Mystic Illusion Pavilion. Today, I've caused trouble for your Mystic Illusion Sect. Presumably, the Mystic Illusion Pavilion on the Heaven Receiving Stone has been rebuilt. Now, this young master will tear down the Mystic Illusion Pavilion again. If you're not satisfied, come and bite this young master. Yu Wuxi's eyes were gloomy. He immediately picked an airship at the dock and drove the airship away from the dock after driving the airship away. Only a group of cultivators on the dock were left in an uproar. Moreover, there were many knowledgeable cultivators among them. Some cultivators even recognized Yu Wuxi's identity and were inexplicably shocked. Yu Wuxi was the Mystic Illusion Sect's ancestor, a terrifying expert who had reached the 8 steps of the Void Sky Realm. Chapter 2064. Demolishing Dark Illusion Pavilion. The Receiving Heaven Stone was no longer as lively as it used to be. At this moment, it was deserted and deserted. Ever since the Receiving Heaven Stone was sealed, no cultivators had entered or exited it, so it was naturally devoid of life and desolate. In High Heaven Pavilion, Ren Yangon was strolling around in boredom. Looking at the deserted environment, he could not help but shake his head and whisper, "Who is that Zhuan?" He actually made the 8 great sects join forces to seal off the star field's borders. Ren Yangon had a complicated look in his eyes. The 8 great sects joining forces to arrest a rogue cultivator was definitely a major event that had never happened in the star field. Although Ren Yangon was a disciple of High Heaven Sect, he still admired the rogue cultivator named Zhuowen. Speaking of Zhuowen, Ren Yangon recalled Long Wen, who had personally demolished Dark Illusion Pavilion. Long Wen was also a rogue cultivator, and his cultivation was not weak. As soon as he arrived at the Receiving Heaven Stone, he killed a Dark Illusion Sect disciple. Later, the conflict escalated and he even demolished Dark Illusion Pavilion. Ren Yangon saw that Long Wen was a talent, so he wrote a recommendation letter, intending to recommend Long Wen to High Heaven Sect. However, he did not expect that High Heaven Sect's elder Bai would reject Long Wen. As for where Long Wen went, Ren Yangon did not know. Oh, isn't this our pavilion master Ren? Why are you leisurely strolling around the streets today? A cold voice sounded, causing Ren Yongon's footsteps to stop abruptly. Ren Yangon stared at the black-armored man in front of him and the group of black-armored soldiers behind him and said coldly, "Yong Tang, what I do has nothing to do with you, right?" The black-armored man named Yong Tang was the new master of Dark Illusion Pavilion sent by Dark Illusion Sect. He was slightly stronger than Ren Yangon. Moreover, Dark Illusion Sect knew that Ren Yangon had helped Long One, so over the years, Dark Illusion Pavilion had been extremely arrogant, openly and secretly targeting High Heaven Pavilion. Ren Yangon had reported this matter to High Heaven Sect many times, but his news was like a stone sinking into the sea, not a single reply. How is it unrelated? Back then, you were the one who protected the culprit who destroyed the Dark Illusion Pavilion, right? So many of our people have died. Do you dare say that it has nothing to do with you? Yong Tang mocked. Ren Yongon's gaze was sharp as he stared coldly at Yong Tang. What is the meaning of this? Yong Tang laughed mockingly. What do you mean? I don't mean anything by that. I just think that an eye for an eye. Back then you shielded the murderer. Now that the murderer is nowhere to be found, this debt can only be settled with you, right? Ren Yongon's eyes were filled with anger as he said, "You want to fight?" As he spoke, Ren Yongon's aura erupted from his entire body. At the same time, all of the cultivators from Towering Heaven Pavilion rushed onto the street, aggressively glaring at the Yong Tang group across from them. Yong Tang grinned, unwilling to be outdone. His imposing aura swept out like a hurricane. The auras of the two clashed, setting off a terrifying whirlwind that swept across the surroundings. The strange situation here immediately attracted the attention of the other encampment cultivators. One cultivator after another flew to the top of the encampment building and looked at the two groups of people on the street with interest. No one came out to stop them, nor did they want to stop them. The Star Domain's lockdown had caused the heaven-receiving boulder to be unusually cold and cheerless. If there was no entertainment, they would all be bored to death. Now that the Dark Mirage House and Towering Heaven Pavilion were about to fight, why would they want to stop such an opportunity to watch a good show? Just as the two groups were about to fight, a flying ship broke through the air and arrived above the heaven-receiving boulder in an instant. It's the Dark Mirage House's flying ship. Didn't this ship just fly away a few days ago? Why is it back? Everyone raised their heads and looked at the flying ship that had landed on the heaven-receiving boulder with puzzled eyes. Yong Tang's brows furrowed slightly. His gaze landed on the flying ship with a strange expression. "I'll settle the score with you later," Yong Tang said viciously before heading straight for the flying ship. He wanted to ask the pilot what was going on. Generally speaking, a flying ship would take several months to make a round trip. It was illogical for it to fly back after only a few days. The instant Yong Tang's group arrived at the flying ship, the cabin door opened and a straight figure walked out. Why are you on my Dark Mirage Sect's flying ship? And where are the others from my Dark Mirage Sect? Yong Tang stared fixedly at the youth who walked down from the flying ship. He could not help but ask with furrowed brows. The person paused. He looked at Yong Tang and asked indifferently, "You're a disciple of the Dark Mirage Sect?" Yong Tang raised his head and puffed out his chest. He said rather proudly, "Of course. I'm also the new house master of the Dark Mirage House." Tell me the truth. So you're the house master of the Dark Mirage House. How about this? This one has something to give you. You better catch it. Zhuowen smiled faintly. With a wave of his sleeve, a streak of purple light shot out at the speed of light towards Yong Tang. Just as Yong Tang was about to ask what it was, his expression changed drastically. He immediately summoned his natal divine artifact to block the purple light. Unfortunately, his divine artifact crumbled the moment it came into contact with the purple light. The purple light pierced through Yong Tang's forehead like a hot knife through butter, killing him in one blow. Yong Tang was merely a true god of three disasters, while Zhun was already a void sky expert. Dealing with Yong Tang with such cultivation was a piece of cake. Plop. Yong Tang fell to the ground, dead. The surroundings fell into a long silence. No one expected that the young man who had just come out of the flying ship would kill Yong Tang in one move. For a moment, no one could react. Brother Longwen, on the street, Ren Yangon muttered softly as he stared at the young man who killed Yong Tang with a wave of his hand. The purple light didn't slow down at all after killing Yong Tang. It continued to rush forward, passing through the group of black-armored cultivators behind Yong Tang at an extremely fast speed. In just one breath, all of them were dead. This completely shocked the many cultivators who were watching the battle. This person is a Void Sky expert. He's definitely a Void Sky expert. The surrounding cultivators all had expressions of fear on their faces. Only a Void Sky expert could so cleanly dispose of Yong Tang. There was no other possibility. Ren Yangon, on the other hand, was astonished. Although he knew that Longwen wasn't an ordinary person, he still didn't expect him to advance to the Void Sky so quickly. Brother Long, you have to be careful. There's still a Void Sky expert guarding the Dark Illusion House. Ever since you destroyed the Dark Illusion House, the Dark Illusion sect sent him over. He's been staying in the Dark Illusion House ever since. After killing the Dark Illusion sect, Zhuan heard Ren Yongon's voice transmission. Zhuan nodded and replied, Brother Ren, this Long will need to leave the star field for a period of time. Do you have a way to get me out of the star field? This time, Yun didn't plan to force his way out of the receiving heaven stone. Instead, he wanted to leave this place with Ren Yongon's help. Although Zhuan didn't have a good impression of the High Heaven sect, he had a good impression of Ren Yangon. If Ren Yangon could really help him this time, he wouldn't be stingy. After all, he had a lot of resources, comparable to the great forces of the star field. He was probably the only person in the entire star field who could have so many resources. Ren Yangon frowned slightly, revealing a hesitant expression. This time, the 8 great sects had joined forces to seal off the receiving heaven stone. It would be too difficult for him to take people out. Moreover, if this matter was exposed, the consequences would be disastrous. If Brother Ren finds it difficult, this Long won't force you. Wen naturally saw the hesitation on Ren Yongon's face and transmitted his voice again. Ren Yangon grit his teeth and said, Brother Long is too polite. This time, this Ren will risk everything and help you. Zhuan revealed a look of ecstasy at the corners of his mouth as he replied, Many thanks, Brother Ren. Saying so, Wen rushed to Ren Yongon's side and whispered, I hope Brother Ren can help me quickly. I'm in a hurry. Zhuan could clearly feel that Yu Wuxi's flying ship was getting closer and closer to the receiving heaven stone. If Yu Wuxi arrived here, it would be very difficult for him to escape. Brother Long, rest assured. This method is very fast. However, I need a key. The key is with the Void Sky Master in the Dark Illusion Pavilion. Ren Yangon glanced at Zhuan. Don't worry. Let me tear down the Dark Illusion Pavilion first. Zhuan waved his hand and rushed towards the Dark Illusion Pavilion. This guy, he's so bold, Ren Yangon was dumbfounded. Although he knew that Zhuan had also reached the Void Sky realm, he was afraid that his cultivation level was not very high. The Void Sky Master guarding the Dark Illusion Pavilion had reached the Void Sky realm 3 times. Ren Yangon didn't think that Zhuan would gain anything by barging into the Dark Illusion Pavilion. On the other hand, many cultivators on both sides of the street swarmed over excitedly and followed Zhuan. Zhuan soon arrived in front of the Dark Illusion Pavilion. Ever since Zhuan had torn it down, the rebuilt Dark Illusion Pavilion looked much brighter and more upright. Moreover, the restrictions inside were much stronger. Zhuan waved his sleeve and immediately summoned 24 golden no-beginning demon swords. A terrifying black-gold killing intent vortex emerged from the combination of the no-beginning demon golden sword and blasted against the barrier of the Dark Illusion Pavilion. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, the restrictions on the surface of the Dark Illusion Pavilion collapsed like clay chickens and pottery dogs. The vortexes of killing intent formed by the golden no-beginning demon swords continued to wreak havoc inside the Dark Illusion Pavilion. The huge Dark Illusion Pavilion was instantly torn to pieces. Which daring bastard dares to tear down this old man's Dark Illusion Pavilion? A loud shout suddenly came from the depths of the Dark Illusion Pavilion. Then, a terrifying hand slammed into the vortexes of killing intent and repelled them. The Lord of the Dark Illusion Pavilion has made his move. The surrounding cultivators who had rushed over all had grave expressions. They all knew that the Void Sky Master was not to be trifled with. It was precisely because of the support of this Void Sky Master that the Dark Illusion Pavilion had been extremely arrogant and despotic all these years. Chapter 2065. Suddenly, it was an old man in a dark blue Taoist robe. His hair was mottled with black and white, and his face was green. He looked quite strange. The old man glanced at Jun indifferently and said coldly, "Who are you? Why are you destroying my phantom tower?" With the old man's character, he would have taught Jun a lesson as soon as he arrived. However, after noticing the void heaven aura on Zhuowen's body, he did not act rashly. Zhuon stood proudly and said indifferently, "I'm Longwen. I'm here to destroy your phantom tower." After saying that, Zhuon waved his sleeve. The 24 golden demon swords turned into a vortex of killing intent again and swept toward the old man. The old man's eyes were extremely dark. He knew that the young man in front of him was here to destroy his phantom tower. At the same time, he also heard the name Longwen. His eyes were filled with killing intent, but he was inexplicably surprised. He remembered that Renyangon had said that Jun was only a true god when he first entered the receiving heaven stone. It had only been a few years, but he had already advanced to the void heaven realm. Wasn't his cultivation speed too fast? However, the current situation did not allow the old man to think too much. The terrifying vortex of killing intent was already in front of him. It's actually Longwen. There's a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. There's no door to hell, but you insist on entering it. You think you're invincible after advancing to the void heaven realm? How ridiculous! The old man in the Taoist robe sneered. With a wave of his sleeve, a terrifying energy turned into a giant hand and slammed into the vortex of killing intent. Rumble! Violent energy overflowed in all directions. Soon after, the giant hand and the vortex of killing intent exploded into a ring-shaped airwave, creating countless vacuum zones and erupting with terrifying energy. The huge receiving heaven stone seemed to be trembling. The old man in the Taoist robe groaned and retreated continuously. On the other hand, Yuan was as immovable as a mountain. The old man in the Taoist robe was frightened. The Taoist-robed old man revealed a look of fear. The powerful strength that Zhuowen had displayed had greatly surprised him. Zhuowen stomped his right foot. Another 12 golden demon swords flew out of his spiritual ring and slammed into the old man in the Taoist robe. The Taoist-robed old man no longer held back. He took out his natal divine artifact and summoned the illusory heavenly bridge at the same time. His aura instantly increased by several times. Bang bang bang. When they collided again, the old man in the Taoist robe was not afraid at all. Instead, he suppressed the vortex of killing intent. The old man in the Taoist robe laughed out loud. He was about to mock Zhuowen when the coldness in the corner of Zhuowen's mouth became more and more intense. Whoosh! Zhuowen once again released the 12 no-beginning demonic golden swords. The terrifying killing intent vortex suddenly increased in intensity, breaking through the layers of defenses before the Taoist-robed old man. The Taoist-robed old man hurriedly retreated while simultaneously strengthening his defenses. Zhuowen continued to move forward, arriving at the back of the whirlpool and taking out the remaining 24 demon golden swords. Bang bang bang! When all of the no-beginning devil golden swords were stacked together, the vortex of killing intent that was produced was extremely powerful. The old man's defense was like a clay chicken and pottery dog, completely useless. Pucci. The old man in the Taoist robe did not even have time to react before the vortex of killing intent completely enveloped him and tore him into pieces. Zhuowen stepped onto the illusory heavenly bridge of the old man in the Taoist robe. He raised the purple sword in his right hand above his head and slashed down fiercely. A terrifying and huge purple moon rose slowly and then suddenly fell down, smashing onto the illusory heavenly bridge and completely shattering it. At this moment, the surroundings were silent. The battle between Zhuowen and the old man in the Taoist robe was too short. It was over in just a few breaths. Originally, everyone thought that this would be a stalemate between a fierce and fierce battle. But now, beyond their expectations, the old man in the Taoist robe who had ascended 3 times in the illusory heavenly bridge was actually dealt with so cleanly by Zhuan. Ren Yangon was even more stunned on the spot. Looking at that proud figure, his eyes were full of complexity. Brother Ren, this should be the key you mentioned, right? I'll leave it to you this time. Zhuan rushed to Ren Yongon's side and handed over a key that was emitting a 7-colored light to Ren Yangon as he said softly. Ren Yangon took the key, nodded solemnly, and immediately said, "Brother Long, come with me." Saying that, Ren Yangon took Zhuan and walked straight towards High Heaven Pavilion. After entering High Heaven Pavilion, Ren Yangon brought Zhuan to a secret basement of High Heaven Pavilion. This basement was surrounded by piles of yellow boulders, looking quite simple and gorgeous. In the center of the basement, there was a huge spirit array, but this spirit array was dim at the moment, obviously lacking energy supply. Brother Long, the entrance to the receiving heaven stone has been completely sealed by the experts of the 8 great sects. It is impossible for you to go out, but my High Heaven Pavilion has another shortcut, and that is this spirit array. This spirit array was left behind by the Pavilion Master of High Heaven Pavilion. This person has a fanatical interest in spirit arrays and is even more unruly. The receiving heaven stone was also sealed, but it was not as strong as this time. At that time, the Pavilion Master was very unhappy because he was the Pavilion Master. Since the receiving heaven stone was sealed, he had to stay on the receiving heaven stone and wait for the seal to end before he could go out. Otherwise, he would be treated as a spy. In order to slip out, the Pavilion Master arranged this spirit array. It is said that this spirit array can directly leave the star field without going through the receiving heaven stone. Ren Yangon came to the side of the spirit array and patiently explained. Did the Pavilion Master try this spirit array? Zhuowen's eyes flashed as he asked curiously. Ren Yangon was a little embarrassed as he smiled and said, "No." After he finished arranging this transmission array, the seal was lifted, so he didn't need to use this transmission array to leave the receiving heaven stone. As for this key, it is actually the key to open this spirit array. At that time, Elder Su Tian of the Dark Illusion sect, in order to retaliate against my High Heaven Pavilion for helping Brother Long, caused a lot of trouble here. He saw that I valued this key very much and wanted to snatch it away, so Zhuan nodded and didn't pursue the matter with Ren Yangon, saying, "Can we begin now?" Ren Yangon said as he threw the 7-colored key into the spirit array. Then, the key automatically drilled into the groove in the center of the spirit array. Suddenly, the dim and lightless formation burst out with a blazing 7-colored radiance. Zhuowen knew that the formation had been activated. Suddenly, Zhuowen's face changed slightly. He immediately grabbed Ren Yongon's shoulder and stepped into the 7-colored spirit array. Rumble! The moment Zhuowen entered the 7-colored spirit array, the entire High Heaven Pavilion erupted with a terrifying tremor. Soon after, High Heaven Pavilion was destroyed and all the cultivators inside were killed. The basement was also directly opened by this terrifying force, revealing Zhuan and Ren Yangon who had entered the spirit array. "Then, you little bastard, you can't escape." The moment the basement was opened, an aura as vast as the sea suddenly appeared in the basement. The entire basement couldn't withstand this terrifying aura and countless fine cracks appeared. "Open the teleportation array," Zhuan shouted at Ren Yangon. Ren Yangon trembled. This aura was too terrifying, making him feel as if he was facing the might of the heavens. In front of this aura, it was as if the entire sky was collapsing. Now, Zhuowen yelled at him, finally making him sober up. He didn't ask who this person was but immediately activated the teleportation array. Suddenly, a terrifying teleportation array wrapped around the two of them. "Want to leave? Do you think it's possible?" Yu Wuxi's voice resounded once again. Then, a terrifying giant hand, as if the dome of the sky was collapsing, instantly pressed down and smashed on the 7-colored teleportation array. Zhuowen's eyes darkened as he immediately released the black-clothed Zhuan. The black-clothed Zhuan revealed the incomparably huge true body of Devour, and its pillar-like claws met the terrifying giant hand. In an instant, the terrifying collision set off countless astral winds. Then, numerous cracks appeared on the surface of the huge receiving heaven boulder. All the cultivators on the receiving heaven boulder were terrified. They floated in the air and looked at the receiving heaven boulder, which was already riddled with holes. Pucci. Zhuan spat out a mouthful of blood. Devour's claws were completely destroyed. The demonic fog around its huge body dispersed, revealing countless bloody scars on its body. It looked as if it would shatter at any moment. Although Devour's state was quite miserable, it had still managed to block Yu Wuxi's terrifying attack. Let's go! Zhuan immediately put away Devour. Then, the seven-colored teleportation array teleported Ren Yangon and Zhuan away from this place. After Zhuan and Ren Yangon were teleported away, Yu Wuxi, with a gloomy face, slowly landed on the ruins of High Heaven Pavilion. He quietly looked at the teleportation array that had completely lost its brilliance. He knew that the other side of the teleportation array had been completely destroyed by Zhuan. Even if he reactivated the teleportation array, it would be impossible for him to teleport out. Little bastard, Yu Wuxi took a deep breath and roared towards the sky. His roar reverberated endlessly on the receiving heaven boulder. As soon as Yu Wuxi arrived on the receiving heaven boulder, he discovered that the Dark Fantasy Pavilion had been destroyed. Then he learned from the crowd that the person who destroyed the Dark Fantasy Pavilion had been brought into High Heaven Pavilion. So, he mercilessly destroyed High Heaven Pavilion in an attempt to capture Zhuan. However, he never expected that he would be one step too late. There was actually a teleportation array hidden under High Heaven Pavilion. The cultivators on the receiving heaven boulder quickly distanced themselves from Yu Wuxi and stared at this terrifying figure with dread. Chapter 2066. The Land of the Far West. This was a huge meteorite belt. The meteorite belt was like a halo around a satellite, slowly rotating in a circle. A seven-colored light appeared on a huge meteorite in the center, and under the seven-colored light, there was a seven-colored array. Within the seven-colored light, two wretched figures appeared. Pucci, one of the white-clothed youths, suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the side of the array. He immediately took out a purple sword and completely destroyed the array that was glowing with rainbow light. The other middle-aged man in a blue robe also fell to the side, but his condition was much better than the young man in white. These two people were naturally Zhuan and Ren Yangon, who had left the star field through the transmission array. Ren Yongan's face was extremely ugly. When he found that the expert chasing Longwen was so terrifying, he had already regretted it. But it was too late to regret now. The High Heaven Pavilion had been destroyed by the unknown expert, and he had followed Zhuan out of the transmission array. Returning to the receiving heaven stone was naturally unrealistic. Now Ren Yangon was a little distressed. Brother Long, is your real name Zhuan? Ren Yangon seemed to think of something and suddenly asked Zhuan. The voice had called Zhuan's real name before, so he also knew Zhuan's real name. At this moment, Zhuan's face was pale. He took out a jade bottle and drank a drop of Heavenly Domain Star Essence, and his face became much rosier. Brother Ren, this jade bottle contains Heavenly Domain Star Essence. Take it. If it weren't for you this time, my life might be in danger. Zhuan handed the jade bottle to Ren Yangon. But Ren Yangon's entire person was dumbfounded. He held the jade bottle in his hand, his entire body trembling with excitement. Heavenly Starry Sky Essence. When he was in Zhongyu, the 8 great sect masters fought for 2 drops of Heavenly Starry Sky Essence. Now, he actually obtained a whole bottle of Heavenly Starry Sky Essence. This was like a dream for him. Ren Yangon gently opened the bottle cork, and suddenly a terrifying medicinal power soared into the sky, forming a huge phantom above him. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Ren Yangon closed the bottle cork, took a deep breath, and cupped his hands to Zhuan. Thank you, Long. Brother Zhua. Ren Yangon wanted to call Zhuan Brother Long, but thinking of Zhuan's real name, he changed the way he addressed him. At this moment, Ren Yangon had already forgotten that Zhuan had destroyed the High Heaven Pavilion. There was only a bottle of Heavenly Domain Star Essence in his hand. The Heavenly Domain Star Essence. The value of this bottle of Heavenly Domain's Starry Sky essence was almost immeasurable. Even if Ren Yangon had to die now, he would feel that it was worth it. Yangon Yangon. Yangon Yangon. Yangon Yangon. Zhuowen took out a Void Ascension pill from his spirit ring and handed it to Ren Yangon as he said with a smile. At this moment, Ren Yangon was flattered to receive the Void Ascending pill, and the unhappiness in his heart suddenly disappeared. With the Void Ascending pill and Heavenly Domain Star essence, even if he betrayed High Heaven Sect, he would still have profited. Thank you, Brother Zhua. Many thanks. Ren Yangon said quickly. Zhuowen waved his hand and said, Brother Ren is too polite. This time, it was all thanks to you that I was able to escape. These things should be given to you. This time, Zhuowen was indeed very grateful to Ren Yangon. If it weren't for Ren Yangon, he really would have been finished. He was very willing to take out a bottle of Heavenly Domain Star Essence. After all, his life was much more important than this bottle of Heavenly Domain Star Essence. Zhuowen looked at the surrounding asteroid belt and asked, Where is this place? Ren Yangon carefully put away the Heavenly Domain Star Essence and Void Ascending pill before immediately taking out the star chart from his spirit ring and looking at it for a while. What's wrong? Zhuowen could not help but ask in surprise when he saw the strange look in Ren Yangon's eyes. Ren Yangon said, Brother Zhua, this place is close to the westernmost part of the Great Brahma domain. It doesn't seem to be far from the waning waxing moons. I really didn't expect the power of the transmission array to be so powerful that it could teleport the two of us so far. Zhuowen also showed a strange look. He also didn't expect that the transmission array hidden in High Heaven Pavilion could teleport them so far. Wasn't it comparable to the ancient transmission array? The waning waxing moons is not far from here, so can we go in now? Zhuowen suddenly asked. Ren Yangon looked around and smiled bitterly. Brother Zhua, the westernmost part of the heaven domain has a terrifying magnetic field. This magnetic field will interfere with the direction of our divine sense. Although we know the geographical location of the waning waxing moons, if we go in blindly, we will most likely lose our way. Zhuowen frowned and said, Then what should we do? Now Zhuowen was a little anxious. He clearly knew the geographical location of the waning waxing moons, but he could not act rashly. Moreover, Ren Yangon was not lying. Just now, he had used his divine sense to determine the direction, but every time he determined the direction was different. He knew that his divine sense was indeed affected by an external object. And this external object should be the magnetic field that Ren Yangon was talking about. We must first enter a certain galaxy or star continent in the far west. According to my impression, the far west is an extremely chaotic place. It is the true forbidden area of the Great Brahma domain. It is said that even the Supreme Great Brahma can't control this area. Ren Yangon said worriedly. Although Ren Yangon had never been to the far west, he knew the notoriety of this area, so he was worried about his own situation. Even Great Brahma can't control it? This far west? Zhuowen frowned slightly. He was very curious in his heart. Since Great Brahma was the master of the heaven domain, he generally had absolute control over the entire heaven domain. But now, Ren Yangon was saying that even Great Brahma could not control the far west. Could it be that there was something special about the far west? Of course, Ren Yangon was not too sure about the specifics of the far west. Ren Yangon had only heard about the far west. Zhuowen summoned Yin Bingyun, Yun Chuyu, and Hong Shan from the spirit ring. They had already escaped the star field, so he naturally had no reason to put them back into the spirit ring. After all, they could not cultivate in the spirit ring. Big Brother Zhua, thank you for saving my aunt this time. Yun Chuyu immediately stepped forward and looked at Zhuowen gratefully. Yin Bingyun came to Yun Chuyu's side and bowed to Zhuowen in an extremely formal manner, saying, Bingyun will not dare to forget your life-saving grace. Zhuowen smiled bitterly and said, The two of you don't have to be so formal. Actually, we are not out of danger. This time, Brother Ren and I, Zhuowen slowly recounted what had happened. When he finished, Yin Bingyun frowned and said, We actually came to the far west. Could it be that Sect Master Yin is very familiar with the far west? Zhuowen looked at Yin Bingyun and asked. Yin Bingyun shook her head and said, I don't know too much about it. However, I once met a senior who had traveled to the far west. He once said that the far west is extremely chaotic, and it is very difficult to travel through the far west with just a star chart. If we can't use our divine sense and star charts, then what do we need to travel through the far west? Zhuan asked with a frown. Flying ships. The flying ships of the far west are very developed, even more developed and powerful than the star field. It is said that the most powerful flying ships built by the cultivators of the far west have cannons that can even kill the strongest powerhouses of the void sky. Yin Bingyun's words were shocking, and her words shocked everyone present. The cultivators of the void sky could be said to be the top powerhouses of the great Brahma domain. It was incredible that a mere flying ship could kill such a powerhouse. Look, there seems to be something flying over there. Suddenly, Ren Yangon pointed to the starry sky on the left and said. Zhuan and the others looked up and indeed saw a black shadow rushing over at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, it had already arrived and stopped outside the meteorite belt. Only then did Zhuan see clearly that this black shadow was actually an incomparably huge pitch-black flying ship. The surface of this flying ship was covered with black scales that looked like dragon scales. If one didn't look carefully, they would think that this was a black dragon flying in the starry sky. Whether it was the shape or the aura, Zhuan found that this flying ship was much more advanced than the flying ships of the 10 major sects in the star field. It seemed that Yin Bingyun was right. The flying ship technology of the far west was indeed much more powerful than that of the star field. The flying ship that had stopped opened a hatch and 5 cultivators walked out. The one in the lead was a burly man in dragon-scale armor. He walked straight toward Zhuan. The burly man sized up Zhuan and the others, and his gaze lingered on Yin Bingyun, Yun Chuyu, and Hong Shan. Yin Bingyun and Yun Chuyu in particular were extraordinarily beautiful. Although their faces were covered by veils, it still couldn't hide the extraordinary temperament of the 2 women. The 5 of you are refugees, right? Our captain found the 5 of you and planned to help you. The burly man said indifferently. Thank you, brother. Ren Yangon hurriedly said with a smile. The corners of the burly man's mouth curled up slightly and he continued, I think you know the rules, right? Rules? Zhuan asked with a frown. Chapter 2067. Lang, brother. The 5 of us are cultivators from outside the land of the far west. When we came to the land of the far west this time, our flying ship was accidentally destroyed. The 5 of us were lucky and escaped with our lives, so we don't know the rules here. Ren Yangon said with a smile. The burly man responded with an oh. Immediately, he sized up the 5 of them again and said, in that case, I will tell you the rules. If you want to board the ship and leave this meteorite belt, you need to pay a fare. Our captain will not let you come up and take up space for nothing. Yun was relieved when he heard that. If this person let them board the ship, then there would be a problem. Zhuan felt that it was normal that they had to pay a fare to board the ship. After all, there was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. How much do you need? Ren Yangon asked. 10,000 divine stones per person. The sturdy man said indifferently. Zhuan frowned slightly. Although he felt that the ticket was a little expensive, there was nothing he could do. After all, they could only leave this place on the ship. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be able to determine the direction, so it was impossible for them to walk aimlessly. The sturdy man's expression eased when he saw Zhuan hand over 50,000 divine stones without hesitation. Then he led Zhuan's group into the flying ship. After passing through dozens of aisles, the sturdy man brought the 5 of them to a hall that wasn't very big. There were soft ring-shaped chairs in the hall, but at this moment, the chairs in the hall were filled with cultivators, so there were no empty seats. Zhuan frowned as he looked around the hall. There weren't even any seats in the hall. Could it be that they had to stand? Ren Yangon, Yin Bingyun, and the other 3 also had similar expressions. They had paid 50,000 divine stones, but there weren't even any seats, let alone the single room they wanted. After bringing Zhuan's group of 5, the sturdy man left the hall. He didn't have any intention of paying any attention to Zhuan's group. Zhuan looked around the hall and found that most of the people here were true gods. There were also a few void sky cultivators, but they were very few. Moreover, very few true gods dared to casually approach these void sky cultivators. This resulted in these void sky cultivators occupying a rather large empty space. The arrival of Zhuowen's group of 5 attracted the attention of many cultivators. Of course, these cultivators were not paying attention to Zhuowen and Ren Yangon. Instead, they were paying attention to Yin Bingyun, Yun Chuyu, and Hong Shan, who were standing beside Zhuowen. Regardless of whether it was Yin Bingyun or Yun Chuyu, just Hong Shan's beauty alone was incomparably alluring. In particular, the flirtatious glint that occasionally flashed through her beautiful eyes caused many cultivators' hearts to heat up. They wanted nothing more than to ruthlessly ravage her. Although Yin Bingyun and Yun Chuyu had veils covering their faces, just by looking at their delicate bodies and temperaments, one could tell that these 2 women were definitely not ordinary. They were many times better than the ordinary female cultivators in the hall. A man in his 30s wearing a blue robe sat upright on a huge empty seat. He opened his eyes and directly ignored Zhuowen and Ren Yangon. His gaze landed on Yin Bingyun and Yun Chuyu. This person sized up Yun Chuyu and Yin Bingyun in an extremely presumptuous manner. Suddenly, he grinned and said, "Beauties, take off the veils on your faces and let me have a good look." When the surrounding cultivators saw this blue-robed man, they all revealed expressions of fear. Lan Gui has taken a fancy to these 2 female cultivators. I'm afraid these 2 women will suffer. What a pity for these 2 delicate beauties. Everyone's eyes revealed looks of pity. This blue-robed man was called Lan Gui. He was one of the few void sky cultivators in the hall and was extremely powerful. Moreover, this Lan Gui had an extremely disgusting hobby, which was to play with women. The more beautiful the woman, the more miserable Lan Gui would play with her, and he would even enjoy it. During this journey, many female cultivators had been forcefully played to death by Lan Gui. These were all seen by the surrounding cultivators. However, Lan Gui was too powerful. Although many cultivators could not bear it, they only dared to be angry and did not dare to say anything. Now, Lan Gui had specifically asked the 2 female cultivators who had just entered to take off their veils. Everyone knew what Lan Gui would do next, so they could only silently mourn for the 2 female cultivators. As for the other void sky cultivators, they were not surprised at all. They did not even glance over. Instead, they sat cross-legged on the spot and silently cultivated. Yun Chuyu and Yin Bingyun frowned slightly. Their beautiful eyes revealed disgust. The 2 women's observation skills were not weak. Naturally, they could see the trace of lust in Lan Gui's eyes. They could guess that this person's intentions were definitely not pure. What? Are the 2 beauties shy? There's no need to be shy. Since you're shy, I'll have to take the initiative. Lan Gui licked his lips and immediately stretched out his right hand. Terrifying energy turned into a huge hand that was the size of a cattail leaf fan. It instantly enveloped Yun Chuyu and Yin Bingyun. However, just as the huge hand approached Yun Chuyu and Yin Bingyun, there was a flash of violet light, and the hand collapsed. Lan Gui's eyes narrowed. His gaze finally landed on Zhuowen, who wielded a violet sword. He said fearfully, "Sir, what is the meaning of this? How dare you get in the way of me?" Although Lan Gui was lustful, he was not an idiot. When Zhuowen attacked earlier, he knew that he was also a void sky cultivator. It seemed like he had bitten off more than he could chew this time. Kneel down and apologize to the 2 of them. Zhuowen looked down at Lan Gui as he spoke, and all of the cultivators present fell into a daze. The entire place was filled with astonishment, and even a pin drop could be heard. Even Lan Gui was stunned. He even suspected that he had misheard. When Zhuowen attacked earlier, he could tell that Zhuowen's cultivation was only at the first step of the void sky realm. His cultivation was almost the same as his own, yet he dared to speak so arrogantly. Wasn't he a little too conceited? The other void sky cultivators all opened their eyes and silently stared at Zhuowen and Lan Gui. "What if I say no?" Lan Gui sneered. Spurt. As soon as Lan Gui finished speaking, the violet light swept past his right arm like lightning. Afterwards, blood sprayed into the air as his right arm was instantly severed. Kneel down, Yuan arrived with his sword. He calmly stared at Lan Gui, who was staring blankly at his severed right arm. The surrounding cultivators all gaped. Wasn't this young man a little too ferocious? He had actually severed Lan Gui's right arm without anyone noticing. Even the other Void Sky cultivators had grave expressions on their faces. They hadn't clearly seen how Zhuowen had severed Lan Gui's right arm. "You bastard!" Lan Gui came to his senses and roared. His eyes were as red as blood as he immediately summoned his natal artifact. Lan Gui's natal artifact was a skull forged from jade. As soon as the skull was summoned, a gust of wind and a rain of blood swept toward them, sending chills down their spines. As soon as the skull appeared, it opened its mouth wide and flew toward Jun. Countless eerie evil spirits rushed out of the skull. Zhuan discovered that these evil spirits were all beautiful and graceful women. It seemed like Lan Gui was indeed a bastard. After toying with the women's souls, he collected them into the skull and cultivated them into evil spirits to enhance the power of his natal artifact. Zhuowen's gaze was ghastly cold as an incomparably enormous divine sense suddenly erupted, transforming into countless branches that bombarded the bodies of those evil spirits. Zhuowen's divine soul was truly too powerful, and evil spirits were illusory beings. Divine sense could cause considerable damage to them. In just an instant, all the evil spirits in the surroundings were wiped away by Zhuowen's consciousness. Afterwards, Yuan swung his sword and struck the jade-colored skull, sending it flying without any resistance. The violet sword did not slow down at all and instantly severed Lan Gui's limbs. Thump! Lan Gui collapsed in a pool of blood as he constantly struggled. His eyes were filled with viciousness and malice. Zhuowen kicked Lan Gui to the side, then led Yun Chuyu, Yin Bingyun, and the others to occupy Lan Gui's position without any scruples. Logically speaking, with Lan Gui's cultivation, he should have been able to recover very quickly even if his limbs had been severed. However, Zhuowen's violet sword contained the power of Dao. This power could suppress Lan Gui's recovery abilities. Although Lan Gui desperately circulated the energy within him in an attempt to regrow his limbs, it was to no avail. Moreover, his wounds failed to close up. Blood constantly poured out, basically forming a small pool of blood in the surroundings. "What have you done to me?" Lan Gui roared out. Jun stared at Lan Gui indifferently and said, "If you want to die, you can keep screaming." Lan Gui sensed the chilling killing intent in Zhuowen's gaze. His face froze and he immediately shut up. However, as he continued to lose blood, Lan Yu felt weaker and weaker. He was powerless. The surrounding cultivators kept quiet out of fear, not daring to speak. Their eyes were filled with fear as they looked at Zhuowen, who was sitting on Blue Ghost's seat. They knew that this person was vicious. He had severed Lan Gui's limbs as soon as he had arrived, and he was so powerful as well. They obviously did not dare to provoke him. What's happened? Why is it so messy here? Chapter 2068. Young Master Worryless, Captain Lu, this person has no regard for the law. He actually attacked me in this cabin and cut off my limbs. He's simply audacious and unforgivable. Seeing the burly man enter, Lan Gui acted as if he had seen a life-saving straw. His eyes shone as he hurriedly complained. Ren Yangan, Yun Chuyu, and the others were furious. Just as they were about to defend themselves, Captain Lu coldly snorted and interrupted their words. Captain Lu's sinister gaze fell on Zhuan. He grinned and said, "You're quite bold, newcomer. You've caused such a big mess as soon as you arrived. I have a whole new level of respect for you." With that, Captain Lu walked straight toward Zhuan and finally stopped in front of Zhuan. He looked down at Zhuan and continued, "Now, come with me." Zhuan narrowed his eyes and slowly stood up. He did not refuse and followed Captain Lu out of the hall. After all, Zhuan had just entered this cabin. He still needed to rely on this flying ship to head to the nearby continent, so he did not want to fall out with the people on this flying ship. Otherwise, if they threw him out of the flying ship, he would quickly lose his way. Captain Lu led Zhuowen out of the hall and came to a remote corner. He looked at Yuan indifferently and said, "You're very bold. Do you know what happens to cultivators who violate the rules of our divine continent?" The corners of Zhuowen's mouth curled up. He took out a bottle of fire spirit juice from his spirit ring and handed it to Captain Lu. He said, "I was impulsive just now. I think Captain Lu is a reasonable person." Fire spirit juice? Captain Lu opened the bottle and sniffed it lightly. His eyes revealed surprise. Fire spirit juice could temporarily increase one's comprehension. Even for void sky cultivators, the effect was not bad. Captain Lu's cultivation was at the peak of void sky, so this fire spirit juice would have a great effect on him breaking through his shackles. Captain Lu put away the fire spirit juice with a troubled expression. Zhuowen sneered in his heart. He knew that Captain Lu was complaining that the fire spirit juice was too little. Zhuowen also knew how to behave. He took out 3 more bottles of fire spirit juice from his spirit ring and handed them to Captain Lu. Putting away the 3 bottles, Captain Lu revealed a satisfied expression and said, "Since this is your first offense, then I won't pursue this matter anymore. Be careful next time." Captain Lu was about to leave when he was stopped by Zhuowen. "Is there anything else?" Captain Lu asked with a frown. Zhuowen smiled faintly and said, "Captain Lu, your god Lu is so big. It shouldn't be that you don't have an independent cabin, right?" Captain Lu looked at Zhuowen from head to toe and grinned. "Of course, but the 5 of you are refugees. You don't have tickets for God of Lu beforehand. Naturally, you don't have the right to enjoy the cabin of God of Lu. Can't I buy it now?" Zhuowen asked. The smile on Captain Lu's face deepened. He said, "Of course you can buy it, but it's much more expensive than the outside world. 1 ticket costs 10 million divine stones. Do you want to buy it?" Zhuowen cursed in his heart and said in a low voice, "Yes, and I want to buy 5 tickets." Captain Lu looked at Zhuowen from head to toe and was surprised. Obviously, he didn't expect the guy in front of him to be rich. When he thought about how this guy could take out 4 bottles of fire spirit juice at once, Captain Lu felt relieved. "Sure, I happen to have 5 tickets with me. As long as you pay, I can give you the tickets and order someone to take you to the corresponding cabin," Captain Lu said calmly. Zhuowen paid the 50 million godly stones without any hesitation and received 5 tickets for the ship. When he returned to the hall, Lan Gui was still lying in a pool of blood like a dead dog. Yun Chuyu, Yin Bingyun, and Hong Shan were nowhere to be seen, while Ren Yangon was lying to the side in a sorry state, constantly twitching and struggling. After Zhuowen returned, the hall immediately fell silent. However, Lan Gui chuckled coldly and said, "Serves you right. Those 3 delicate beauties of yours are going to be finished as well. Perhaps they'll end up in a much more miserable state than when they fell into my hands." Zhuowen arrived by Ren Yongon's side and helped him up. He asked in a low voice, "Brother Ren, what happened?" Ren Yongon coughed up a mouthful of blood and said in a slightly dispirited manner, "Brother Zhuo, not long after you and Captain Lu left, several cultivators with powerful presences appeared at some point in time. They restrained Miss Chu and the others without any explanation and took them away. I resisted with all my might, but I wasn't strong enough. I was heavily injured." Speaking of this, Ren Yongon's face was filled with shame. Clearly, he felt that he had let Zhuowen down. Zhuowen's gaze was cold. How could there be such a coincidence in the world? Just as Zhuowen had been taken away, there were people waiting for an opportunity to come in and kidnap him. These cultivators were probably in cahoots with Captain Lu. "Serves you right. Serves you right." Lan Gui laughed wantonly and even mocked him. Splat. Unfortunately, a purple sword directly sliced off Lan Gui's mouth. Afterwards, Zhuowen slowly arrived before Lan Gui. Lan Gui whimpered loudly as he stared at Zhuowen in fear. His mouth had been sliced off, so he could not even speak clearly. However, from his whimpering, Lan Gui was probably begging for mercy. Zhuowen pressed a hand against Lan Gui's head, and his terrifying divine sense violently invaded Lan Gui's soul. He began to carefully search through his memories. Zhuowen was not familiar with the group of cultivators who had taken Yun Chuyu and the other 2 away. However, Lan Gui had been on the God of Lu for a long time, so he should know a little. Not long after, Zhuowen removed his right hand with a grave expression. From Lan Gui's memories, Juan discovered that the group of cultivators who had taken Yun Chuyu and the other two away was a young cultivator named Young Master Worryless. This Young Master Worryless cultivation was ordinary. It was said that he had just condensed the Void Sky Bridge. However, there were many experts around him. The strongest guard's cultivation had even reached the third step of the Void Sky Bridge. He was quite famous on the God of Lu. Not only that, it was said that the force behind this young Master Worryless was not small. The destination of the God of Lu this time was the Myriad Magnet Sea. The Myriad Magnet Sea was the core of the far west land. It was filled with a more terrifying magnetic field than other places. Because the magnetic field was too terrifying and the range was huge, the magnetic fields constantly collided with each other, forming a vast ocean. It looked exceptionally strange. The Myriad Magnet Sea was also an extremely terrifying and dangerous place. There were many types of giant astral beasts here. Powerful space beasts could easily tear apart ordinary void sky cultivators. Furthermore, the cultivators who entered the Myriad Magnet Sea would not only lose their sense of direction, but if they were not careful, the powerful magnetic field would affect the cultivator's soul, causing cultivators whose souls were not strong enough to immediately lose consciousness and be unable to resist. Once this cultivator was discovered by the giant starry sky beast in the Myriad Magnet Sea, he would definitely die without a doubt. Moreover, the Great Brahma region's most famous danger zone, the Waning Moon Crescent, was located in the depths of the Myriad Magnet Sea. If one wanted to enter the Waning Moon Crescent, they had to enter the Myriad Magnet Sea. Therefore, this time, Yuan and the others entered the God Lu as a free ride. Within the Sea of Magnetism, there were countless giant meteorites that were not affected by the magnetic field. The surface area of these meteorites was extremely large. The large ones were no smaller than the star continents in the star field, and the small ones were slightly larger than the average life planets. Due to the existence of these meteorites, there were countless cultivators and rogue cultivators who came to explore the Sea of Magnetism. Moreover, they formed various forces within the Sea of Magnetism. Young Master Worryless was the son of the Palace Master of Worryless Palace, a rather famous force in the Sea of Magnetism. Young Master Worryless' behavior was extremely unrestrained. He was addicted to dual cultivation. Every time he took a liking to a female cultivator, regardless of her background, he would basically kidnap her and forcefully seize her primordial een. Moreover, his dual cultivation was not the kind that benefited both parties, but a one-sided and domineering one. The cultivation and blood essence of the woman who dual cultivated with him would be completely sucked dry by his domineering dual cultivation method. In the end, she would become a lifeless corpse. It could be said that young Master Worryless was an existence even more disgusting than Blue Ghost. Coincidentally, Blue Ghost was young Master Worryless' underling, the so-called errand boy. What a scumbag! Zhuan muttered, then completely strangled Blue Ghost. Seeing Zhuan casually kill Blue Ghost, no one in the hall dared to breathe loudly. Brother Ren, how about following me to the cabin? Zhuan's eyes revealed killing intent as he looked at Ren Yangon behind him. Ren Yangon revealed a hesitant expression, but when he recalled the earth-shattering and terrifying deeds that Zhuan had done in the star field, he also knew that Zhuan was not simple, so he nodded and agreed. Leading Ren Yangon out of the hall, Zhuan went straight to the cabin on the upper level. The crowded hall they were in was the lowest level of the God of Lu. It was also the worst place. Usually, it was used to store goods and other miscellaneous items. Very few people lived here. The real cabins were on the upper level, and the higher up, the better the cabins were. Young Master Worryless' cabin was on the deck. It was considered a first-class cabin and the best cabin on the God of Lu. At the staircase, a guard immediately stopped Zhuan and Ren Yangon. However, after Zhuan took out the 2 tickets, the guard allowed the 2 of them to board the ship. Brother Zhua, looking at Blue Ghost, that young Master Worryless should have a great background. How do you plan to save Miss Yun and the rest? Ren Yangon quietly asked through voice transmission. Barge in. Zhuan spat out a sentence that almost made Ren Yangon vomit blood. This Zhuan was too bold. He actually dared to be so unscrupulous on the God of Lu. If they barged in, they would definitely break the rules of the god of Lu. At that time, the 5 of them would very likely be abandoned by the god of Lu. Zhuan also saw Rin Yong'an's hesitation and said, "If Brother Rin feels that it's inappropriate, you can choose not to follow me. At this moment, I just want to feel better. Others have already bullied you. If you are a coward, it will only make them worse. Only by displaying your strength and biting back at them will they remember that you are not someone to be trifled with. Next time, they will not mess with you." Chapter 2069. Barging in with the ticket, Zhuan and Rin Yong'an naturally had the right to enter the deck of the god of Lu. Therefore, Zhuan and Rin Yong'an were able to ascend to the deck of the god of Lu without any obstructions. The deck was enveloped in a powerful restrictive array. Through the almost transparent array, one could see the vast starry sky outside the array. Zhuan silently glanced at the scene on the deck, then withdrew his gaze and walked towards the cabin where young Master Worryless was. "Ha, young Master Worryless, it looks like you've gained a lot this time. Did you bring back any good news after returning from the star field?" Suddenly, a rough and unruly voice came from outside the deck, attracting Zhuan's attention. Raising his head, he saw many cultivators standing in front of the railing at the edge of the deck. Among these cultivators, there were 2 people who were the focus of everyone's attention. One of them was a young man with a sickly pale complexion dressed in a light yellow brocade robe. A long sword hung from his waist, and the surface of the scabbard was inlaid with countless sparkling crystals. It was very dazzling. The other person was dressed in a black robe. He was 9 feet tall and as sturdy as a tiger. His skin was dark, and his bearing was extraordinary. The rough and unruly voice just now had come from this black-robed young man. Zhuan knew that the pale-faced young man should be the young Master Worryless he was looking for. However, he did not immediately go up. Since this young Master Worryless was on the deck, Yun Chuyu and the other 2 should have been brought back to the cabin by this young Master Worryless subordinates. He gave Rin Yong'an a look, and the 2 of them entered the deck as if nothing had happened. They blended into the crowd on the deck, and no one noticed anything unusual. Zhuan quietly walked into the crowd surrounding young Master Worryless and heard young Master Worryless' voice. "Hee, a very interesting rogue cultivator has appeared in the star field this time. It is said that this rogue cultivator has played 8 of the 10 great sect masters in the star field. A mere loose cultivator can play the 8 sect leaders in circles? Young Master Worryless, are you making things up?" the black-robed young man said in disbelief. Young Master Worryless smiled and said, "That's because that loose cultivator has a treasure like the heavenly starry sky essence. Do you think anyone from the 10 great sects can remain calm?" As soon as he said this, the crowd went into an uproar. Heavenly starry sky essence was obviously very attractive to them. The black-robed youth also revealed a strange expression and looked at young Master Worryless, wanting him to continue. Worryless didn't keep them in the star field in the star field, he told them all of the star fields grand interstellar. "Ha! This independent cultivator called Zhuan is a talent. His strength isn't bad, and his boldness isn't small either. If he's nurtured properly, he'll absolutely become a terrifying and ambitious figure in the future." The black-robed young man laughed loudly. 2. Speaking of which, I also want to meet Zhuan. Unfortunately, my luck is too bad. Speaking of... Young Master Worryless sighed. Zhuan sneered. He glanced at Rin Yong'an and said, "Brother Ren, you stay here and keep an eye on young Master Worryless. I'm going to check this guy's cabin." After getting Rin Yong'an's affirmative answer, Zhuan quietly left the deck. Young Master Worryless' cabin was heaven number 10. Zhuan learned this from Blue Ghost's divine soul memory. Every cabin on the Divine Lu ship was set up with powerful restrictive spells to prevent other cultivators from breaking into the cabin and stealing. Without the key, once the restriction was triggered, it would immediately trigger the alarm. At that time, everyone on the ship would know. Standing in front of heaven number 10, Zhuan's powerful divine sense spread out. After confirming that there was no one around, his eyes fell on the door of heaven number 10. At the same time, More than 300 divine soul galaxies in his spiritual space operated at the same time. His powerful divine sense entered the door without making a sound. Fortunately, Zhuowen's level of array Dao was extremely high. While he used his divine sense to explore the door, he also used the all-devouring restriction to hide his aura. This was to prevent the restriction inside the door from detecting his aura and triggering the alarm. After about 2 hours, Zhuowen's divine sense finally completely invaded the door. Then, his divine sense turned into a large hand and opened the restriction from inside the door. Quietly opening the door of heaven number 10, Zhuowen sneaked in. Then, he frowned and found that the door was filled with the charming smell of rouge and powder. At the same time, a pink mist floated in the room. With a light sniff, Zhuowen actually felt a slight heat in his lower abdomen. He knew that this thing was probably an aphrodisiac or something similar. Holding his breath, Zhuowen's sharp eyes fell on the corner of the room. There were 3 beautiful figures tied up there. Zhuowen did not need to think to know that they were definitely Yin Bingyun, Yun Chuyu, and Hong Shan. Just as Zhuowen was about to undo the bindings on the 3 women, Ren Yangon sent him a message. Young Master Worryless has returned to the cabin. Be careful. Zhuowen frowned slightly and hurriedly resealed the restriction in front of the door. Then, he dove into the wardrobe at the side and circulated the all-devouring formless, completely restraining his aura. The moment Zhuowen hid in the wardrobe, the door of heaven number 10 was opened. The pale-faced young Master Worryless slowly walked in. His eyes carried a lustful light as he looked at the 3 beauties tied up in the corner of the room. Moreover, their 5 senses had been blocked. 3 beauties. This young master will immediately undo the shielding on your 5 senses. Young Master Worryless grinned and came to the 3 women's side. He quickly tapped them, and the 3 women immediately spoke in clear voices. Who are you? Why have you kidnapped us here? Yin Bingyun was the calmest. She coldly looked at young Master Worryless and asked. Young Master Worryless carefully examined Yin Bingyun's peerless beauty. Yin Bingyun's beauty was not inferior to Yun Chuyu's. Moreover, Yin Bingyun had a more mature charm than Yun Chuyu, so to men, Yin Bingyun was more alluring than Yun Chuyu. Young Master Worryless gently lifted Yin Bingyun's delicate chin and clicked his tongue in wonder. What a seductive little vixen. You're so alluring even when you're angry. This young master can't bear to part with you. Yin Bingyun wanted to struggle, but it was a pity that young Master Worryless was stronger than her. Moreover, her cultivation had been sealed, so she could not break free from the hand that she loathed. Yun Chuyu and Hong Shan also glared at him. Although they did not know what young Master Worryless was trying to do, it was obvious that he was up to no good. Young Master Worryless stood up and silently sized up the 3 women in front of him. In the end, he pulled Hong Shan out and said with a smile, Little beauty, let's start with you. If we play with the best from the start, we might end up with a fly in the ointment. As he spoke, young Master Worryless let out a lewd laugh. His hand unceremoniously reached into Hong Shan's lapel. Hong Shan's beautiful eyes were filled with shame and anger. Just as young Master Worryless was about to succeed, a purple light suddenly shot out. It was extremely fast and pierced towards young Master Worryless' back. Young Master Worryless' right hand suddenly exerted force and forcefully pulled Hong Shan to his chest. He abruptly turned around and used Hong Shan as a shield. The purple light was extremely fast, but when it realized that young Master Worryless was using Hong Shan as a shield, it immediately changed direction and landed beside Hong Shan's feet. Bang bang bang. Instantly, the ground beside young Master Worryless' feet shattered and cracked. The purple light exploded and looked extremely strange. Young Master Worryless grabbed onto Hong Shan and hastily retreated to the corner of the room. He coldly stared at the youth who suddenly appeared in the room and said, Who exactly are you? Zhuowen looked at young Master Worryless in astonishment. His timing was very accurate, but this young Master Worryless still managed to dodge his sneak attack. It was obvious that young Master Worryless had discovered him in advance. However, his previous series of actions were merely a show in front of him. How did you see through it? Zhuowen put away his purple sword and asked indifferently. Young Master Worryless sneered and said, "This room is filled with this red mist. It is an aphrodisiac that this young master personally concocted. This young master has left his divine sense imprint in it. The moment someone enters this young master's room, this young master will immediately know. Speaking of which, this young master really admires you. You didn't even need a key and you were actually able to enter this room. It seems like your array Dao standard is pretty good." Zhuan neither agreed nor disagreed. He slowly walked towards young Master Worryless and said indifferently, "Now, you only have one choice, and that is to immediately release these 3 women. Only then will you have a chance to live." Young Master Worryless narrowed his eyes and laughed loudly, saying, "Are you crazy? Who exactly is strong and who is weak now? Don't tell me you can't tell?" After young Master Worryless finished speaking, 3 figures with powerful auras rushed in from outside heaven number 10. These 3 people's divine senses were firmly locked onto Zhu. As long as Zhuan dared to move, these 3 people would definitely attack without mercy. Zhuan glanced at the 3 people indifferently. These 3 cultivators weren't weak. 2 of them had a cultivation of 2 steps in the Void Sky realm, while the other old man had a cultivation of 3 steps in the Void Sky realm. This kind of lineup was enough to capture a 3-step Void Sky expert. Zhuowen's aura was only 1 step in the Void Sky realm, so it was no wonder that young Master Worryless was so confident. "Now, do you still dare to say those big words from before?" Young Master Worryless looked at the youth in front of him with ridicule and said. Zhuan nodded. He still looked at young Master Worryless indifferently and said, "I said, you only have one choice, and that is to immediately release these 3 women. Otherwise, you will die without a doubt." The ridicule on young Master Worryless' face disappeared. He licked his lips and said coldly, "It seems like you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. You guys go and kill this brat. This young master will reward you handsomely." Boom. Chapter 2070. The Sinister Human Heart Bang. 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 In an instant, Jun was engaged in a fierce battle with the 3 cultivators. It was unknown if it was intentional, but after young Master Worryless ordered the 3 cultivators to enter, he closed the door again, as if he didn't want the other cultivators on the Divine Continent to know. Young Master Wu Yu's mouth was filled with a sneer as he looked at Zhuo Wen, who was retreating step by step under the joint attack of the 3 cultivators. "Your strength is not bad, to actually be able to resist the joint attack of the 3 of them. However, how long can you last?" Before young Master Worryless could finish his words, the cabinet beside him suddenly shattered, and a black shadow rushed out, heading straight for the complacent young Master Worryless. Bang! The black shadow was too fast, and before young Master Worryless could react, he was sent flying and smashed into the wall. "You," young Master Worryless roared, and the jade pendant on his waist emitted a terrifying light, forming a thick wall of light in front of him. The black shadow was silent, and with a step, it arrived in front of young Master Worryless. His right hand grabbed at the air, and terrifying pitch-black lightning condensed into a pitch-black longsword in his palm. Bang! 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 The pitch-black longsword slashed out hundreds of times in an instant, and the light wall on the surface of young Master Worryless shattered. Young Master Worryless spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face turned pale. The black shadow stretched out his right hand, and the black lightning extended out like a chain, instantly binding young Master Worryless' neck and lifting him up. Young Master Worryless wanted to resist, but unfortunately, the black shadow was much stronger than him, and no matter how he struggled, it was useless. The 3 cultivators who were fighting Zhuowen immediately noticed the abnormality on young Master Worryless' side, and they were startled, turning their heads to look. The eyes of Zhuowen, who'd been suppressed since the beginning, emitted a dazzling bright light. He flicked his sleeve and withdrew 48 golden devil swords. They crisscrossed through the air and formed layers of overlapping vortexes of killing intent that swept towards the 3 people who were in a daze. The 3 of them didn't expect Zhuon to suddenly exert his strength, and their attention was completely attracted by young Master Worryless. For a moment, they didn't react, and were directly hit by the killing intent vortexes. Pucci. Two of the cultivators who reached the second step of the illusory sky instantly exploded into clouds of blood mist. Even the illusory sky bridge was shattered into pieces. They were deader than dead. The other cultivator was seriously injured. He coughed out a mouthful of blood and smashed into the wall. His expression was dispirited and he continued to twitch. Young Master Worryless was scared silly. Looking at the young man who had defeated his 3 personal guards in an instant, his heart was filled with fear. With young Master Wu Yu's intelligence, how could he not know that Zhuan had intentionally concealed his strength in order to numb them? As for the unfamiliar cultivator shrouded in demonic mist, he was definitely an accomplice of the young man in front of him. He had actually not noticed this before. This time, he had really miscalculated. Zhuan came to the side of the wall and stabbed the glorious amethyst galaxy sword into the cultivator's forehead, destroying his soul. At the same time, sharp sword chi circulated around the cultivator's body, destroying the illusory heavenly bridge in his body. I said before that you only had one choice. Unfortunately, you made the wrong choice. Then, don't blame me for being impolite. Zhuowen arrived in front of young noble Worryless and nodded to the black-robed Zhuowen. Zhuowen clenched his right hand, and an extreme lightning sword pierced through young noble Worryless' body. The terrifying extreme lightning energy spread throughout young noble Worryless' body, instantly turning him into dust. After dealing with the corpses in the room, Zhuowen released the shackles on Yin Bingyun, Yun Chuyu, and the 3 women. Yun, I owe you another life. Yin Bingyun said with a slightly ashamed expression. Zhuowen waved his hand and said, If I hadn't been purposely sent away by Captain Lu, you wouldn't have been captured. The responsibility is mine. Although Yin Bingyun and the other 2 still wanted to say something, they were stopped by Zhuowen. Zhuowen said, From now on, we'll cultivate in this cabin. Also, I'll call Brother Ren over later. For the time being, no one knew about young Master Wu Yu's death. Moreover, this heaven number 10 cabin was extremely large. There were 4 to 5 bedrooms inside, enough to accommodate 5 people. Moreover, the red mist that young Master Wu Yu had arranged in the room had been completely devoured by Zhuan with his devouring power. The 3 women who were originally under the influence of the aphrodisiac had used their divine power to completely expel it. Not long after, Ren Yangon, who had been notified by Zhuowen, quietly arrived at the door of heaven number 10. He appeared extremely nervous and cautious. When the door opened, Ren Yangon jumped in fright. Seeing that it was Zhuan, he hurriedly went into the cabin. Brother Zhua, did you get rid of young Master Wu Yu and the others? Ren Yangon asked with trepidation. Zhuan nodded and said with a smile, From now on, we'll cultivate in young Master Wu Yu's cabin until we reach the myriad magnet sea. Brother Zhua, didn't you buy 5 tickets? Aren't you going to use them? Ren Yangon asked in astonishment. However, Zhuan sneered and said, Brother Ren, do you really think that Captain Lu is kind? It's not a coincidence that Captain Lu called me out. It's deliberate. Ren Yongan's pupils shrank. He said in a deep voice, Brother Zhua, you mean, won't we know what Captain Lu's intentions are once we go to that cabin? Zhuowen sneered. The God Lu cabin was divided into 4 levels, namely Heaven, Earth, Black, and Yellow. The Heaven cabin was the highest level and was located on the deck of the God Lu cabin. The Yellow cabin was the lowest level and was located on the lowest level. It was only 1 level higher than the pile of junk that Zhuowen was in. At this moment, Captain Lu, who was dressed in black armor, was leading a group of soldiers to the front of the Yellow cabin. Finally, they arrived at the 5th cabin, which was the most secluded cabin. Open these 5 cabins and kill everyone in them, Captain Lu said with a cold look in his eyes. The group of soldiers shouted in unison. Soon after, they opened the 5 cabin doors one after another. Without even looking inside, they bombarded the inside with divine abilities and divine artifacts without any warning. After a while, when there was no movement inside, the soldiers divided into 5 squads and entered the 5 cabins with extreme vigilance. Not long after, the 5 squads came out again and reported, Captain, there's no one in the 5 cabins. Captain Lu narrowed his eyes and revealed a look of astonishment. He knew that 3 of the female cultivators in Zhuowen's group were taken away by young Master Wu Yu's men. After Zhuowen got the tickets, even if he found out that the 3 female cultivators were captured by young Master Wu Yu, after hearing of young Master Wu Yu's reputation, he shouldn't act rashly. Instead, he should return to the cabin to cultivate in seclusion. However, there was not a single person in the 5 cabins. This naturally caused Captain Lu to be exceptionally surprised. The reason why he wanted to kill Zhuowen was naturally because of the fire spirit sap on Zhuowen's body. Since Yuan could take out several bottles of fire spirit sap without a frown, it meant that he had a lot of fire spirit sap on him. Now that Captain Lu was at the juncture of a breakthrough, how could the few bottles of fire spirit sap that Zhuowen gave him be enough? Therefore, he planned to silence him and take all of Zhuowen's fire spirit sap for himself. Not far from the isle, there was a shadow. Ren and Ren Yangon silently watched everything. That bastard is trying to kill us all. This time, it's all thanks to Brother Zhua. Otherwise, we wouldn't even know how we died. Ren Yangon cursed in a low voice with lingering fear. Zhuowen's gaze was extremely cold. He said to Ren Yangon, "Brother Ren, you go back to the cabin first." "What about you?" Ren Yangon looked at Zhuowen in surprise. "I'll go back later. You go back first," Zhuowen said with a smile. Ren Yangon nodded and didn't ask any more questions. He quietly left. At this moment, Captain Lu frowned. The soldiers around him were waiting for his orders. Clean up these 5 cabins and monitor them at all times. If someone enters these cabins with a ticket, inform me immediately. Do you understand? Captain Lu ordered the soldiers around him again and left the place. He walked straight in the direction of Zhuowen. Zhuowen secretly lay dormant. His huge divine sense covered the surface of his body. At the same time, he operated all life formless, to the extreme. Captain Lu didn't notice that Zhuowen was hiding in the dark at all. He walked over as if nothing had happened. The moment Captain Lu walked to the dark place where Zhuowen was, Zhuowen immediately activated the soul-absorbing divine needle. At the same time, he detonated the 100 divine soul galaxies in his spiritual space, boosting his divine sense to an extremely terrifying level. The soul-absorbing divine needle turned into a blazing golden light. With a whoosh, it entered the depths of Captain Lu's forehead. Then, a powerful and terrifying strangling force completely destroyed Captain Lu's divine soul. Zhuowen's huge divine sense turned into an invisible hand that entered Captain Lu's body and crushed his illusory heavenly bridge. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. The soldiers behind only saw Captain Lu suddenly fall to the ground when he walked to the dark place. After killing Captain Lu, Zhuowen quietly left the place. If Captain Lu hadn't been so ruthless, Zhuowen might not have killed him. Unfortunately, Captain Lu was too greedy. First, he sent Zhuowen away and let young Master Worryless kidnap Yun Chuyu and the other 2 girls. Now, he coveted more of the fire spirit juice on him and wanted to take his life. In that case, he couldn't blame Zhuowen for being merciless. What happened to Captain Lu? The soldiers at the back felt that something was wrong. They rushed forward and stopped beside Captain Lu. Then, their expressions changed drastically. They found that Captain Lu's aura was completely gone. It was as if he was dead. Captain Lu is dead. What should we do? The soldiers began to panic. Report to the captain immediately. Captain Lu is the captain's younger brother. This time, Captain Lu is dead. I'm afraid the captain. Thinking of the infamous captain, the surrounding soldiers couldn't help but shiver. However, they didn't dare to not report it. If they hid the truth, they would die very miserably. Chapter 2071. Second Ascension of the Illusory Sky. What was different from the situation outside the cabin was that the cabin of Heaven number 10 was as calm as water. In the room, Zhuowen casually set up a thick seal wall at the door. Then he sized up the spoils of war that he had plundered. Zhuowen moved most of the resources into Devour's inner world. He was going to use the resources to assist the cultivators of Heavenly Armor Star and Ziwei Galaxy in their cultivation. At the same time, he moved the Scarlet Cloud celestial soil herb field that he had dug out from Netherworld Hall to Heavenly Armor Star. The divine herbs in it were almost inexhaustible. It would bring unimaginable benefits to the cultivators of Heavenly Armor Star. After dealing with the Scarlet Cloud Celestial Soil Herb Field and other resources, Juan carefully took out the Ice Lotus that he had obtained from the 3rd level of Netherworld Hall. Juan was sure that there was something unusual about the Ice Lotus that Yu Wuxi had carefully preserved on the 3rd level of Netherworld Hall. The surface of the Ice Lotus was still covered with the Thunder Fire Sword's lightning and fire energy. However, the Ice Lotus gave off a cold air that was too thick and terrifying. The lightning and fire energy gradually weakened and even showed signs of being frozen. Juan creased his eyebrows. Back then, he had come into contact with the Ice Lotus. Hence, he knew how terrifying the cold air that the Ice Lotus gave off was. Once the lightning and fire energy was broken by the Ice Lotus, the terrifying cold air would definitely freeze the entire cabin. The Thunder Fire Sword floated next to Juan. Xiao He sat cross-legged on the sword's hilt and said lazily, "If you want to restrain the Ice Lotus, I'm afraid you'll need a powerful extreme fire energy. This thing is quite beneficial for you to pass through the fire." Extreme fire energy? Zhuowen's eyes twinkled and he immediately thought of Yin Bingyun. Yin Bingyun had passed through the 19th fire and was only one step away from becoming real god extreme fire. The extreme fire energy in Yin Bingyun's body should be able to restrain the terrifying cold air of the Ice Lotus. With that thought, Zhuowen invited Yin Bingyun over. When Yin Bingyun saw the Ice Lotus floating in Zhuowen's room, her beautiful eyes narrowed as she naturally felt the terrifying cold air of the Ice Lotus. However, Yin Bingyun was smart. She didn't ask much but followed Zhuowen's instructions. She poured all her extreme fire energy into the Ice Lotus and merged it with the lightning and fire energy within the Ice Lotus. The thunder fire energy, which had been gradually extinguishing, gradually expanded and finally completely suppressed the cold energy of the Ice Lotus. Sect Master Yin Bingyun. Zhuan Yang as he cupped his hands and cupped his hands. Yin Bingyun 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 Yun Yang. Is Yun 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 Yu? Yu Yun 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 is Dragon Yang Studio? Is Yun Studio Yang Studio Yun 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 Yang Xian Yun Studio Yun Studio Yang Studio. I won't disturb you any longer. Yin Bingyun smiled and left Zhuowen's room. After Yin Bingyun left, Yuan Yang Studio sat cross-legged in his room and prepared to cultivate. Since Dark Fantasy Sect had taken so many resources from him, it would be a waste if he didn't use them for cultivation. 1 month later, Yuan Yang Studio opened his eyes and there was a huge illusory heavenly bridge behind him. The illusory heavenly bridge was overflowing with purple light. There were a total of 9 steps. The first step was bright while the other 8 steps were dim. Phew, let's try to step onto the second step. Yuan Yang Studio fixed his gaze on the dim second step. He knew that once he stepped onto the second step, the dim step would shine with dazzling light. His realm would also advance to the illusory heavenly second step smoothly. However, each step on the illusory heavenly bridge was harder than the previous one. The pressure was also scarier than the previous one. Although Zhuan Yang Studio had consumed all the resources he had taken from Dark Fantasy Sect in the past month, he still didn't have enough confidence to completely step onto the second step. However, he could give it a try. Thinking of this, Zhuan Yang Studio landed on the illusory heavenly bridge. Then he stomped his right foot and stepped onto the second step. Boom! Boom! Suddenly, a terrifying explosion resounded from the second step of the illusory heavenly bridge. Subsequently, an earth-shattering pressure pressed down on Zhuowen. Zhuan Yang Studio snorted coldly and stood firm against the terrifying pressure. At the same time, the more than 300 divine soul galaxies in his spiritual space began to operate at full speed. To Zhuan Yang Studio's surprise, he stepped onto the second step without any pressure. Suddenly, the dim step lit up rapidly. The surface of the illusory heavenly bridge became more solid and its aura became more vast. Yuan Yang Studio's essence, qi, and spirit were raised to another level. Zhuan Yang Studio knew that he had completely advanced to the second step of the illusory heavenly bridge. His strength had increased by more than a few times. I wonder if I can also step onto the third step of the illusory heavenly bridge? Zhuowen looked at the dim third step with a burning gaze. After thinking for a long time, he finally took a step forward and directly stepped onto the third step. Rumble! Suddenly, a muffled thunderous sound exploded in Zhuanyang Studio's ears. Then, a pressure like the might of the heavens surged over like a tide. Zhuanyang Studio was caught off guard and was hit head-on. With a muffled groan, he fell off the illusory heavenly bridge. After stabilizing his body, Zhuanyang Studio smiled bitterly. It seems that I was too greedy. Advancing to the second step of the illusory heavenly bridge is already the limit. How can I advance to the third step of the illusory heavenly bridge in a row? Suddenly, Zhuanyang Studio's gaze changed slightly. He put away the illusory heavenly bridge, walked out of the room, and came to the door. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Yun Chuyu, Yin Bingyun, and the others heard the noise and walked out one after another. They looked at each other, and the atmosphere became heavy. Who's it? Zhuanyang Studio asked coldly. Brother Wu Yu, it's me. Fang Zhen, open the door. Let's go to the deck and take a stroll. I don't know what's wrong with the captain of the Divine Continent these days, but he's suddenly put up such heavy security and forbade the passengers from casually coming out. A rough voice came from outside the door. Zhuanyang Studio recognized this voice. Wasn't it the black-robed young man who was talking loudly with young Master Wu Yu on the deck? At that time, from the way young Master Wu Yu and the black-robed young man stood, the black-robed young man's background was probably not inferior to young Master Wu Yu's. All right, I'll open the door for you right away, Zhuanyang Studio said, then indicated for Yun Chuyu, Yin Bingyun, and the others to hide. Afterward, he took out the mask god tool he obtained from the Hongyun Trading Company and put it on his face. Then he used all life formless to change his appearance to young Master Wu Yu's. After opening the door, the black-robed young man sized up Zhuanyang Studio, then looked inside the cabin and said, "You took so long to open the door. Are you hiding a mistress inside? Do you want me to catch her for you?" Zhuanyang Studio frowned slightly. He knew that he must have aroused the black-robed young man's suspicion. "Hehe, you also know my nature. You were right when you said that I was keeping a mistress in a golden house." Zhuanyang Studio smiled, then transmitted his voice to Yin Bingyun and the others, telling them to come out. At this moment, Zhuanyang Studio was calmer than anyone else. If the black-robed young man before him was really suspicious and wanted to check the cabin, Zhuanyang Studio had no way to stop him. He could only use this method to evade him. After all, on this God Lu, the cultivators who knew Yun Chuyu and the others were basically all dead, so he was not afraid of being recognized. Of course, even if they recognized him, Zhuanyang Studio was not afraid. These three women were originally kidnapped by young Master Wu Yu's men. Now that they appeared by young Master Wu Yu's side, wasn't it very normal? TSK. Sure enough, young Master Wu Yu knows how to enjoy life. You've hidden three beauties all of a sudden. It's really not simple. The black-robed young man, Fang Zhen, gave him a thumbs up and laughed. Let's go. Let's go to the deck and take a look. Also, what do you think happened to the God Lu recently? Could it be that something happened? Zhuanyang Studio closed the cabin door, then walked to the deck side by side with Fang Zhen. Fang Zhen said with a gloomy expression, "I heard that the captain's younger brother died, so the captain is now turning the entire God Lu upside down to find the murderer. However, the results are minimal. Moreover, the captain is even crazier. He actually broke into every cabin and searched carefully in order to find the murderer who killed his younger brother." Zhuanyang Studio silently followed behind Fang Zhen, but his heart was filled with astonishment. He knew that Captain Lu, who he had killed, should be the captain's younger brother that Fang Zhen was talking about. He did not expect that Captain Lu's position was not high, but his background was so great. What Zhuanyang Studio did not know was that Captain Lu's previous position was extremely high, above many of the cultivators on the God Lu. However, Captain Lu had angered everyone and was impeached by many cultivators on the God Lu. Under the pressure, the captain could only demote Captain Lu's position to captain. After the matter died down, he would promote Captain Lu again. However, now that Captain Lu had been killed by Zhuanyang's studio, the captain was completely enraged. Even if he had to pay a huge price, the captain swore that he would find the culprit. Since the captain is searching the cabin, why isn't there any movement from my heaven number 10? Yuan asked in surprise. Fang Zhen smiled and said, the cultivators who are able to stay in the sky cabin are all people of high status. The captain doesn't dare to search the sky cabin at will. Otherwise, he would offend too many people and it wouldn't be good for him. Hearing this, Zhuowen's heart relaxed slightly. What he was most afraid of was that the captain would search heaven number 10. Once they searched, Ren Yangon would definitely be exposed. At that time, he would also become the target of public criticism. This was not the result he wanted. Now, he only wanted to safely ride the god Lu to the myriad magnetic sea. The two of them arrived at the deck. At this moment, there were quite a number of cultivators gathered on the deck. The numerous cultivators that came forward all greeted Zhuowen and Fang Zhen warmly. Yuanyang's studio naturally knew that these people were not greeting him, but the young master Zhuowen that he was impersonating. Standing on the deck and looking at the vast starry sky outside, Yuan and Fang Zhen quietly chatted. Chapter 2072. Doubt from Fang Zhen. Yuan knew that the carefree palace behind young Master Warriorless was a slightly famous force in the myriad magnet sea. It had many experts and abundant resources. As for Fang Zhen, he was the young master of a force called the Xiantian Valley. His father was the master of the Xiantian Valley and possessed monstrous authority. He was in the limelight in the Xiantian Valley. Fang Zhen and young Master Warriorless were birds of a feather. Although they hadn't known each other for long on the god Lu, their relationship wasn't bad. It just so happened that the carefree palace and the Xiantian Valley were on par. The two of them quickly became good friends and often hung out together. Zhuan also found out from Fang Zhen that the captain of the god Lu was called Lu Wuqi. He was an itinerant cultivator, but his talent was extraordinarily high and he had many fortuitous encounters. His cultivation had reached the 6th level void sky. After struggling in the myriad magnet sea for thousands of years, he finally established his own flying ship and force. His reputation in the myriad magnet sea wasn't small. There were many flying ship forces in the myriad magnet sea, but this god Lu was sufficient to be ranked in the top 20 among the numerous flying ships in the myriad magnet sea. It could be seen that this Lu Wuqi was extraordinary. Yuan wasn't afraid of the 6th level void sky. Even if Lu Wuqi discovered that it was he, Zhuowen, who killed his younger brother, Zhuowen wouldn't panic in the slightest. But the purpose of Zhuowen's trip this time wasn't to kill, but to head to the myriad magnet sea and enter the waning phases. He naturally didn't want any unforeseen events to occur on the god Lu. In this unfamiliar land of the far west, Yuan could only rely on the god Lu to reach the myriad magnet sea. Otherwise, it would be difficult to move an inch. Thump, thump. All of a sudden, hurried footsteps sounded like steel hitting the ground, resounding throughout the entire deck. Subsequently, at the end of the deck, a group of over 20 black-armored soldiers walked over quickly, causing many cultivators on the deck to frown. The deck was within the scope of the heaven cabin, and the soldiers of the god Lu rarely came up with such great fanfare. After all, most of the people in the heaven cabin were existences with powerful backgrounds. Lu Wuqi never dared to act rashly. But now, this group of soldiers had come in so brazenly. It would be strange if the other cultivators were comfortable. The leader of the group was clad in black scale armor. He led the soldiers towards young Master Warriorless and Fang Zhen. Fang Zhen, who was originally conversing with young Master Warriorless, frowned slightly. He stared coldly at the soldiers and asked, "What is the meaning of this?" The leader bowed politely and said, "This lowly one Guiyang greets the two sirs." "I'm very sorry to disturb the two sirs this time, but this lowly one is under Captain Lu's orders to take these 3 women away. I hope that young Master Warriorless can give Captain Lu some face." After saying that, the leader turned his head and bowed deeply to Zhun. His expression was full of respect, and he did not dare to show any neglect. On the other hand, Yun Chuyu, Yin Bingyun, and Hong Shan, who were standing behind Zhuowen, had pale faces. "So that's how it is." In any case, they are used shoes that Brother Worryless is tired of playing with. Naturally, giving them to Captain Lu is no problem. Fang Zhen said indifferently. Fang Zhen knew young Master Worryless' nature. Although he was lustful, he was extremely cold, especially towards the women he had played with. He would either use his domineering dual cultivation method to suck their blood essence and cultivation dry, play them to death, or give them away casually. It could be said that in young Master Worryless' eyes, women were like livestock. They were completely useless. If he could throw them away, he would throw them away. If he could kill them, he would kill them. Therefore, Fang Zhen did not mind and treated it as giving Lu Wuqi some face. The leader's eyes were filled with joy. Just as he was about to express his gratitude, a terrifying palm wind suddenly whistled over and heavily slammed into his chest. Pucci. The leader suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was pale and bloodless as he heavily smashed into the ground. He was on his last breath. You actually dared to ask for the women that this young master has taken a fancy to in front of me. Are you looking down on this young master? Zhuan looked down at the leader and said indifferently. The originally clamorous deck instantly became extremely silent. Many cultivators looked at young Master Worryless while discussing animatedly. Obviously, they did not expect that young Master Worryless would suddenly make a move and heavily injure the leader. This was obviously not giving Lu Wuqi any face. Fang Zhen opened his mouth but did not speak. He frowned slightly. Just now, when Zhuan made a move, he noticed that the latter's aura was actually much stronger than his. Zhuan had probably already attained the second step of the illusory sky realm. But Fang Zhen remembered that young Master Worryless' cultivation was not high a month ago. He had merely condensed the illusory sky bridge not long ago. It had only been a month since they last met, yet young Master Worryless had already attained the second step of the illusory sky bridge. His speed of advancement was really too fast. After the leader was defeated, the soldiers behind him drew their weapons and looked coldly at Tun. What? You still want to make a move against this young master? Your divine continent is really something. Are you relying on this young master's presence on your flying ship to silence me? Zhuan said fearlessly. Since young Master Worryless' identity was not ordinary, he naturally would not make good use of it. Stop. Let's go. The leader struggled to get up and shouted at the surrounding soldiers. Shortly after, he knelt on one knee and said while panting, Young Master Worryless, this lowly one was rude just now. I hope that young Master Worryless will not take offense. Scram. If this young master fancies a woman, I would rather kill and throw her away than give her to you. If you want this young master to give her away, then what is this young master? Am I a subordinate of your divine continent? Zhuan said indifferently. Once these words came out, the surrounding cultivators all nodded. Zhuan's words were in line with Zhuan's current identity as young Master Worryless. Young Master Worryless' identity was honorable, and the Worryless palace behind him was not small. Although the palace lord was also a cultivator at the sixth step of the illusory sky bridge, his strength was only stronger than Lu Wuqi's. Moreover, the divine continent only had Lu Wuqi, a sixth step illusory sky bridge expert, while the Worryless palace had 4 such experts. It was obvious who was stronger and who was weaker. After the leader left, Fang Zhen carefully sized up Zhuan in front of him and said with a smile, Worryless, you brat, you hid it from me for quite a long time. I originally thought that your cultivation was about the same as mine, but I didn't expect you to hide it so deeply. Your cultivation reached the second step of the illusory sky bridge so quickly. You really make me envious. Zhuan smiled and said, Brother Fang, you've misunderstood. You should know that I'm cultivating a dual cultivation technique. This cultivation technique is different from yours. It requires dual cultivation in order to rapidly increase my cultivation. As he said that, Zhuan pointed at Yin Bingyun and the other 2 behind him and said with a lewd smile, These 3 are of the highest quality. In this 1 month, it was because of these 3 that my dual cultivation reached the large success stage. Why do you think my cultivation increased so quickly? Fang Zhen looked at Yin Bingyun and the other 2 in surprise. He believed Zhuan's words a little. Fang Zhen naturally knew that young Master Warriorless cultivated a dual cultivation technique. However, he didn't expect that his cultivation would increase so quickly after encountering a top-quality cultivation furnace. On the other hand, Yin Bingyun and the other two's faces were flushed red, even to their ears. They cursed Zhuowen's shamelessness in their hearts. After hearing Zhuowen's words, the doubts in Fang Zhen's heart were immediately dispelled. He laughed heartily and said, "As expected of Worryless. I really envy you for being able to find such top-quality cultivation furnaces." As he said that, Fang Zhen's eyes revealed a look of envy. When he heard that the three of them were of the highest quality, he originally wanted to ask Zhuowen for one or two to play with. However, when he thought of the fate of the captain of the Divine Continent, he gave up on that idea. Zhuowen chatted with Fang Zhen for a while more before bidding farewell and returning to the cabin. On the other hand, Fang Zhen gave Zhuowen an ambiguous expression and didn't ask Zhuowen to stay. Zhuowen led the three women through the crowd. At the entrance, he stopped because someone was blocking his path. It was a middle-aged man with a scar on his right eye. His body was filled with a soul-shaking ferocious aura, like a trapped beast that had just been released from its cage. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and coldly stared at this person. Judging from this person's aura, he knew that this person was an expert at the sixth step of the Void Sky realm. On the Divine Continent, there weren't many people with a cultivation base at the sixth step of the Void Sky realm. Who else could it be but the captain of the Divine Continent, Lu Wuqi? "What's the matter?" Zhuowen asked indifferently. Lu Wuqi didn't say anything. He only glanced at Zhuowen before looking coldly at the three women behind Zhuowen. He grinned and said, "It's nothing. This king just has some questions to ask the three women behind young master. I wonder if young master will give me face?" At this moment, the deck was completely silent. Many cultivators were quietly watching this scene. Even Fang Zhen looked over, but he didn't walk over. He wanted to see how Zhuowen would deal with Lu Wuqi. Although Fang Zhen knew that young Master Carefree had brought experts with him, he didn't think that Carefree Palace would send out their strongest experts. At most, they would send some experts at the third step of the Void Sky realm. However, such experts weren't worth mentioning in front of Lu Wuqi. They were like ants. Zhuowen smiled faintly and said, "These three are this young master's women. Can Captain Lu give me face and not ask any questions?" Lu Wuqi's expression stiffened and his eyes turned cold. Everyone on the deck was in an uproar as they discussed animatedly. No one expected that young Master Carefree wouldn't give Lu Wuqi any face when he personally came out. This was too much of a character. "Then what if I insist?" Lu Wuqi suddenly laughed. Soon after, a terrifying aura erupted like a vast mountain, completely suppressing Zhuowen's body. Yun Chuyu and the other two women's expressions changed drastically. They couldn't withstand this terrifying pressure. Their bodies trembled, and they almost knelt on the ground. However, this pressure left as quickly as it came. A terrifying divine sense swept out from between Zhuowen's brows and turned into a thick barrier around him, firmly blocking this terrifying pressure. "What? Does Captain Lu want to use force?" "It looks like you don't put the Carefree Palace behind this young master in your eyes at all." Zhuowen sneered. Lu Wuqi frowned slightly. Seeing that Zhuowen wasn't affected in the slightest, he withdrew his pressure. Chapter 2073. Myriad Magnet C. Young Master Worryless, I don't intend to do anything to your women. I just want to ask you a few questions. Lu Wuqi said calmly. Zhuowen's eyes flickered as he replied indifferently, "If you want to ask questions, you should have said so earlier. Previously, you even sent someone over to take away my women so arrogantly. Do you really think that you can take away my belongings just like that?" Lu Wuqi nodded and clapped his hands. A cultivator who was tied up was thrown at Lu Wuqi's feet. Zhuowen looked over. Wasn't that the cultivator in black armor who wanted to take the women away from him earlier on? However, at this moment, the black-armored cultivator's eyes were filled with terror. He quickly kowtowed to Zhuowen and begged for mercy. "Young Master Worryless, please spare my life. This lowly one did not mean to offend you. Please forgive this lowly one. I will kowtow to you." After saying that, the black-armored cultivator kowtowed to Zhuowen, causing his forehead to bleed. Suddenly, the black-armored cultivator's movement stiffened. A pitch-black spear pierced through his chest, causing blood to splatter everywhere. The black spear spun and the cultivator in black armor spat out a mouthful of blood before exploding into a blood mist. Zhuon waved his sleeves and blocked the splattering blood as he looked indifferently at Lu Wuqi, who was standing in front of him with a spear. Lu Wuqi smiled. This person didn't know the rules and actually offended you, young master worryless. Now that I've killed him, I wonder if you vented your anger? It's all right. Zhuon replied indifferently. Lu Wuqi's smile deepened. Then, about what happened earlier on, young master worryless, what do you think? Go ahead and ask, but you must know that these 3 women are very important cultivation furnaces for this young master. If anything happens to them, I don't mind reporting this matter back to Carefree Palace, saying that your god Lu is looking down on our Carefree Palace, Zhuowen said indifferently. Lu Wuqi frowned slightly and could only smile politely. Young master, don't worry. Who would dare to touch your things? I'm just asking a question. Zhuowen nodded and no longer spoke. Lu Wuqi looked at Yunqiu and the other 2 and asked, the 3 of you are very lucky to have young Master Worryless backing you up, so I will not do anything to you. However, I have a question for you now, and I hope you can answer it properly. As he spoke, Lu Wuqi didn't wait for the 3 women to answer and continued, I heard from others that you have 2 companions who entered the god Lu with you. Where are the other 2? Who would have thought that the 3 women would be at a loss? They shook their heads and said, after we followed young master, we don't know their whereabouts. As for where they are, we don't know either. Lu Wuqi frowned slightly. He glanced at young Master Worryless by the side and nodded. Since that's the case, then this Lu will be rude. As he spoke, Lu Wuqi led his subordinates and quickly left the deck. Zhuon looked at Lu Wuqi's departing figure and frowned slightly. He had a feeling that things weren't that simple. Lu Wuqi's younger brother was dead, so how could he let the matter go so easily? Moreover, Zhuon felt that Lu Wuqi was beginning to suspect him. Inside the dimly lit flying ship, Lu Wuqi sat quietly with a cold gaze. Behind him stood 2 people. Their auras were like dragons and were exceptionally terrifying. My lord, there's something wrong with young Master Worryless. Before young master died, he came into contact with young Master Worryless. If it weren't for young master Worryless wouldn't have captured those 3 female cultivators so easily, one of them said in a deep voice. Do you want us to kill him in secret? After all, we haven't reached the infinite magnetic sea yet. The other person said with a murderous aura. Lu Wuqi snorted coldly and said, do the 2 of you want the god Lu to be finished? If we kill young Master Worryless on the flying ship, wouldn't it be telling Carefree Palace that we killed him? Although young Master Worryless is suspicious, it's not enough to kill him. Let's observe him for a while first. In the following period of time, Zhuon spent almost all his time cultivating in the cabin. Occasionally, he would go out for a stroll or chat with Fang Zhen. With the many resources of the Mystic Mirage sect on him, coupled with his almost extravagant consumption of resources, Zhuowen's cultivation speed was extremely fast. Very soon, he stabilized the 2nd step of the illusory sky realm. The flying ship flew in the starry sky for a full 3 years before arriving at the infinite magnetic sea. Although the infinite magnetic sea wasn't very far, the extreme west was filled with powerful magnetic fields. Although the flying ship had the ability to distinguish directions, it still needed time. Therefore, the flying ship flew and stopped during the flight, mainly to confirm the direction. It was because of this reason that the flying ship took 3 years to arrive at the infinite magnetic sea. In 3 years, Zhuowen's cultivation had already reached the 2nd step of the illusory sky realm. Ever since coming out of the Tower of Hanno, Zhuon could clearly feel that his cultivation speed was faster than before. After all, it hadn't been long since he reached the 1st step of the void sky realm, but he had already reached the 2nd step of the void sky realm. Now, only 3 years had passed, and he was only 1 step away from the 3rd step. From this, it could be seen that the Tower of Hanner had indeed transformed Zhuowen, but Zhuowen did not notice it. After all, this change was subtle and not so obvious. After leaving God Lu, Yuan planned to find a place to cultivate in seclusion and break through to the third level of the virtual sky before going out to enter the waning moons. After all, the yin, yang, waxing and K formation were not a good place to be. Naturally, he had to be fully prepared. Moreover, the black-clothed Yuan had already broken through to true god of two disasters. Due to the large amount of disaster crystals on him, the black-clothed Yuan could already survive the fire. However, it wasn't suitable on the Lu god, so Yuan had been suppressing it. This caused the black-clothed Yuan to accumulate more and more fires. He had already accumulated 5 fires. For the black-clothed Yuan, the 5 fires occurring at the same time was quite a challenge. However, Yuan wasn't worried. The ice lotus that he had obtained from Yu Wuxi was chilly. With that item, Yuan wasn't afraid of fire. Moreover, Yuan felt that once he became real god of extreme fire, he wouldn't be afraid of the chilly air that the ice lotus emitted. By then, he would be able to study the use of the ice lotus. We have arrived at Dubhe City in the Magneto Sea. This is the final stop. All passengers may disembark. A solemn voice could be heard from every cabin and it reverberated in everyone's ears. We should go, Yuan said and left the cabin with the 3 ladies. As for Ren Yangon, he was kept in the spiritual ring by Jun. As for whether Ren Yangon would stay or go, Yuan planned to ask him after they disembarked from the spaceship. Then, the Lu gods stopped at Dubhe City. It was a famous big city in the Magneto Sea. There were countless spaceships and there were many spaceships that left the westernmost land. As long as Ren Yangon bought a ticket, he could leave the westernmost land and return to the star area. Of course, apart from spaceships, there was also an ancient teleportation formation. However, it was unknown if the teleportation formation in the star area had been unsealed. If it had been unsealed, Ren Yangon could definitely use the teleportation formation to return to the star area. Wu Yu, Dubhe City isn't far from Xiantian Valley. Do you want to go to Xiantian Valley? After leaving the cabin, Fang Jin asked Yuan enthusiastically. Yuan shook his head and said, Brother Fang, I am in a hurry to return. Hence, I won't be going. I will visit again next time when I have time. Seeing that Yuan had rejected him, Fang Jin looked disappointed and said, If that's the case, it's fine. You must visit me next time. I will definitely treat you well. No problem, Yuan said and took the lead to get off the Lu god, disappearing into the crowd. However, after Yuan got off the ship, 2 figures followed him silently. Most cultivators did not notice them at all. Yuan had a map of Dubhe City, so he would not get lost here. Dubhe City was called a city, but it was actually a huge meteorite. However, many cultivators had built Dubhe City on this meteorite. Yuan walked silently, but the corners of his mouth revealed a mocking smile. Soon after, he arrived at the most luxurious inn in Dubhe City. He booked 4 rooms and paid for 3 years' worth of rooms. Then he went upstairs in a leisurely manner. Flourishing Tower? The 2 black-clothed cultivators following him frowned at the same time. Flourishing Tower was the best inn in Dubhe City. It had a strong background and was said to be inextricably linked to the city lord of Dubhe City. No one in Dubhe City dared to cause trouble in Flourishing Tower. What should we do? One of the black-clothed cultivators asked in a deep voice. You go back and report to the captain first. I'll continue to keep an eye on this place. It's best if we kill this kid without anyone knowing. Then, we'll capture the 3 female cultivators and torture them. Young master's death is definitely related to them, another cultivator said. The black-clothed cultivator nodded and disappeared. Yuan went into seclusion for another 3 years. On this day, he suddenly opened his eyes and entered Devour's inner world to release the huge illusory sky bridge. Yuan stepped on the first 2 steps of the illusory sky bridge. His eyes shone brightly like never before as he stepped on the 3rd step. This time, he was confident that he could enter the 3rd step. Boom, boom, boom. The 3rd step of the illusory sky bridge produced a rolling hurricane that swept up Yuan's sleeves. Step over it. Yuan's eyes shone brighter and brighter. His bones creaked and his feet exploded like thunder. Finally, he stepped on the 3rd step of the illusory sky bridge. Zhuowen's aura had completely transformed. His essence, energy, and spirit had reached an unprecedented state. My main body seems to be much stronger than before. After reaching the third step of the illusory sky bridge, Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. He suddenly felt that his strength was much stronger than an ordinary third step of the illusory sky bridge. He could feel that this strength was not due to the power of Tao intent, but the strength of the essence of his body. He remembered that he was not this strong in the past. Tower of Hanno? Zhuowen thought of the Tower of Hanno. It was said that the Tower of Hanno could change one's body, but Zhuowen did not feel anything after coming out of the Tower of Hanno. However, as his cultivation continued to rise, he found that his strength was different from the others. Zhuowen knew that his main body did not have much of an advantage, but after going through the Tower of Hanno, he could feel that his main body's third step of the illusory sky bridge was enough to fight against a fifth step of the illusory sky bridge. If he cooperated with the black-clothed Zhuowen, even the sixth step of the illusory sky bridge would be defeated. As for the seventh step of the illusory sky bridge, it was a little difficult. When he killed the seventh step of the illusory sky bridge, it was because Xiao He had used all of the Thunderfire Sword's Thunderfire Sword and injured the elder to the point of unconsciousness. Chapter 2074. 10 Fires. Zhuowen turned to look at the black-clothed Zhuowen on the other side of the room. At this moment, the black-clothed Zhuowen did not have many calamity crystals left. In 3 years, the black-clothed Zhuowen had crazily absorbed the calamity crystals. Originally, he had accumulated 6 fires, but now he had accumulated 10 fires. As long as Zhuowen was willing, he could immediately make the black-clothed Zhuowen start to cross the fires. "It's time to go out," Zhuowen muttered in a low voice, but his eyes were cold. Zhuowen's soul was extremely powerful. In these 3 years, not only did the cultivator who followed him not leave, he even called for more and more helpers, almost covering the outside of the flourishing building with spies. As long as he, Zhuowen, went out, he would be completely discovered by these spies. The corner of Zhuowen's mouth was full of a sneer. Even if he did not say it, he knew the origin of these cultivators. They were probably sent by Lu Wuqi on the god of Lu. After sending a message to Yin Bingyun, Ren Yangan, and the other 3, Zhuowen swaggered out of the flourishing building and rushed towards the outskirts of Dupi City. The moment Zhuowen appeared, he immediately attracted the attention of the spies around the flourishing building. Then, these spies passed the news to Lu Wuqi, who was still drinking not far away. Ever since Lu Wuqi stopped the god of Lu in Dupi City, he did not set sail again and could be considered to have been completely shelved. Ever since he suspected that his brother was killed by this young Master Wu Yu, he could not sleep and eat in peace. He could not wait to kill this young Master Wu Yu immediately and offer sacrifices to his brother's soul in heaven. Although young Master Wu Yu was the young master of Carefree Palace, he had killed young Master Wu Yu and completely became enemies with Carefree Palace. However, he would definitely avenge his son's death. This time, he wanted to ask clearly. If this young Master Wu Yu admitted to being the murderer, he would give him a quick death. If he did not admit it, he would directly search his soul. If he found out that he was lying, he would make this young Master Wu Yu suffer a fate worse than death. Young Master Wu Yu left the flourishing building. "Sir, should we follow him?" There were 2 cultivators seated beside Lu Wuqi. They were none other than the 2 cultivators who had followed Zhuowen back then. These 2 people's cultivations were both very powerful. One of them was at Void Sky 4 steps, while the other was at Void Sky 5 steps. They were both powerful experts. "Go!" A dangerous glint flashed in Lu Wuqi's eyes. He got up and led the 2 people out of the restaurant. After arriving in the wilderness, Zhuowen purposely chose a remote corner and threw out several formation discs in a steep canyon, setting up a chain of trap and kill arrays. Zhuowen's mastery of formations was not slow either, especially in the battle at the Dark Mirage sect. He had witnessed the various formations of the Dark Mirage sect, which had given him great inspiration. His mastery of formations had also unknowingly risen to the 5th level. After setting up the trapping array, Lu Wuqi had already arrived here with 2 personal experts. Young Master Worryless, From the looks of it, you already knew that we were following you? Lu Wuqi placed his hands behind his back and surveyed the surroundings. Noticing that there was no one around, he knew that this young master worryless had purposely lured them here. Zhuan looked at Lu Wuqi indifferently. From the looks of it, you've long suspected me? Lu Wuqi smiled coldly. My younger brother came into contact with you before he died. Then he died suddenly not long after. Tell me, aren't you suspicious? Don't tell me you want to go against Carefree Palace? Aren't you afraid that Carefree Palace will find trouble with you after you kill me? Zhuan remained calm. But Lu Wuqi laughed loudly and said, after I kill you, I'll drive the god Lu and leave the myriad magnetic sea, far away from the land of the far west. I don't believe that Carefree Palace can find me. At this point, Lu Wuqi's gaze turned cold as he said to the two people beside him, take this person down. Don't kill him yet. I still want to search his soul. I want to see how he killed my younger brother. The two cultivators nodded and immediately rushed toward Zhuan with a sinister smile. You're really going to attack? Zhuan's face turned pale as cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He kept retreating until he reached the canyon. The two cultivators looked at the cowering Zhuan with disdain, and a cold smile appeared on their faces as they said, you really are a coward. You actually dared to lure us out like this. You're really courting death. With that, the two cultivators instantly entered the canyon. Unfortunately, the moment they entered the canyon, Yuan activated the trap and kill array that he had prepared beforehand. Although the trap and kill array that Zhuan had set up could not kill the two of them, it could at least trap them completely. In the outside world, Lu Wuqi's gaze instantly turned serious. He snorted coldly and headed towards the canyon. However, a sturdy black figure blocked Lu Wuqi's path. Looking at the demonic cultivator with blurry facial features and rolling demonic fog, Lu Wuqi frowned slightly. He realized that this demonic cultivator clearly did not have the aura of the illusory sky bridge, but he actually gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. Bang, bang, bang. With this delay, the trap and kill array in the canyon gradually dissipated. Then two corpses were thrown over. Lu Wuqi retreated dozens of meters. Divine power surged from his hands as he caught the two corpses in midair. Then, he was shocked to discover that the two corpses were his two subordinates. The moment Lu Wuqi caught his two subordinates, the black-clothed Zhuan took a step forward and threw a punch. Terrifying lightning turned into a net and wrapped around Lu Wuqi. Lu Wuqi's gaze was cold. Although he was surprised that young Master Worryless had dealt with his subordinates so easily, he did not panic in the slightest. Lu Wuqi took out a black spear from his body and fiercely swung it. The terrifying energy transformed into a huge tiger and blasted towards the lightning net. However, what surprised Lu Wuqi was that the lightning net was extremely strange. When it blasted onto the spear, it wrapped around the surface of the spear like maggots on a corpse. Disperse! Lu Wuqi shook his right hand and an invisible wave spread to the surface of the black spear. Instantly, the lightning wrapped around the black spear was dispersed. After the lightning on the surface of the black spear was dispersed, Lu Wuqi's spear momentum did not change. Its speed was as fast as light as it swept towards the Zhuan's vital points. The black-clothed Zhuan grinned. The aura on his body suddenly became much more terrifying. Then, flames spread out from his body. Boom, 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 boom. The void beneath the black-clothed Zhuan's feet cracked open 10 huge fire pits. Each fire pit was about a dozen feet in size. Inside the pits were raging black flames that soared into the sky and enveloped the black-clothed Zhuan. Because the 10 fire pits spread out too quickly, Lu Wuqi, who was the closest to the black-clothed Zhuan, was also caught in the sea of flames spewing out from the fire pits. What a terrifying fire! The demonic fog on the black-clothed Zhuan's body was burned clean by the flames, revealing his original appearance. At this moment, he realized how terrifying these 10 fires were. Even with the black-clothed Zhuan's super strong body, he felt as if he was being roasted and melted by these 10 fires. Generally speaking, the fires of a double calamity true god wouldn't be so terrifying. Even if 10 fires were stacked together, it still wouldn't be so terrifying. However, it was different for the Zhuan. Devour himself was already heaven-defying. Moreover, Devour, who had become true god Extreme Thunder, was even more heaven-defying. That was why the rules of the starry sky sent down such a terrifying fire. Even a void sky cultivator might not be able to withstand such a terrifying fire. This won't do. I need the help of that ice lotus. Otherwise, even Devour would be seriously injured after passing through the fire. Zhuowen's main body looked at the terrifying fire that almost covered half the sky in shock. He immediately took out the ice lotus from his spirit ring and threw it to the black-clothed Zhuowen, who was still trapped in the fire. The moment the black-clothed Zhuowen caught the ice lotus, a cold air lingered around him, causing the surrounding flames to recede slightly. The black-clothed Zhuowen didn't dare to release the lightning and fire energy on the surface of the ice lotus. After all, even he couldn't control this ice lotus. If he released it, wouldn't he be frozen into an ice sculpture after the fire passed? Sitting cross-legged beside the ice lotus, the black-clothed Zhuowen barely managed to resist the surrounding flames with the help of the ice lotus. At the same time, he began to temper his physique. Time passed day by day. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. The fire burned in the void for 10 days, almost causing the surrounding space to collapse. Finally, the fire completely dissipated. The black-clothed Zhuowen took a step forward. The fire energy on his body was extremely dense. Of course, it was much denser than an ordinary double calamity true god. Now, the black-clothed Zhuowen's main body was sure that even if the black-clothed Zhuowen didn't reveal his true body, his fighting power should be comparable to a void sky fifth-step cultivator. After the black-clothed Zhuowen observed his body, his gaze fell on the vacuum area that had collapsed due to the fire. His eyes slowly narrowed. Back then, Lu Wuqi should have been surrounded by the fire, but now, there was no trace of him. Could Lu Wuqi have been burned to death? The black-clothed Zhuowen's main body muttered softly. Then he landed in the vacuum area. The moment he landed in the vacuum area, a spear light instantly swept over and pointed at the center of the black-clothed Zhuowen's forehead. The black-clothed Zhuowen immediately spread his torch dragon wings and dodged the spear light in the nick of time. Then, the purple sword in his right hand executed sword swimming great void and heavily slashed the figure behind the spear light. Bang! That figure fell to the ground in an extremely sorry state. Then, he straightened his body and fled into the distance. However, this figure didn't manage to escape far before he was intercepted by the black-clothed Zhuowen, who fiercely punched him back. Zhuowen carefully sized up the figure that was struggling to get up. He saw that this person's entire body was charred black and his face couldn't be seen clearly. Zhuowen knew that this person should be Lu Wuqi. Although Lu Wuqi didn't die, his injuries were very serious. If it were a fire caused by an ordinary true god 2 disasters, a void sky cultivator would naturally disdain it. However, the black-clothed Zhuowen was true god Extreme Thunder and his true body was the powerful Devour race in the starry sky. When true god Extreme Thunder advanced to a true god 2 disasters, the fire he produced was very terrifying. Moreover, there were 10 fires superimposed. That power wasn't something an ordinary void sky cultivator could resist. Even if it was Lu Wuqi, if he didn't rely on his powerful divine power to protect himself, he would have lost his life. Lu Wuqi still wanted to run, but unfortunately, the black-clothed Zhuowen, who had survived 10 fires, easily killed him. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.